Good evening.
Oh, there he is.
Good evening, everybody in the back row. Got some people there. I don't know if Little can hear us.
Tamika said she can, so
Okay, perfect.
I'm getting
Okay. You guys are up whenever you want.
We just, do you know how to
Trying to
connect to
join
the
the
meeting?
meeting, yeah.
Do you know how to connect to the meeting from your website?
Oh, do you have the agenda link?
Yeah, if you go into
Town page.
regular agenda.
Mhm.
And then every time you download.
Later on.
Okay, I'm not gonna.
That's all right. I don't, I will, yes, that's perfectly understandable. It's gonna actually tell you in the nicest way possible. You shouldn't do that.
It might take a minute. I think he had to let him, he's gonna give him.
I see it. There we go.
Hey, everyone.
There should be a green arrow at the bottom for sharing.
His presentation will closely resemble this, I'm sure, right?
That would seem like an accurate assumption.
Not too bad for an old Rutland guy, huh?
Mhm.
How you been? How's the job?
It's going.
Not ready to pull your hair out yet?
Is it not already out?
Well, no, you're still good.
For now. What are we on to?
Yeah, Ludwig, where are you tonight? Where does this find you?
I am in the nation's capital, where it is a nice balmy 60-something degrees. It's lovely.
Oh. Only that it isn't here.
In DC.
Yeah.
Well, it was flurrying when I got out of my truck, so.
He flew into DC.
Snow's gone almost.
Careful.
Yeah. People have their.
Jim's gonna turn his microphone off. Is that it?
I don't know, we gotta figure that out.
Jim, is your microphone off?
That's all right, I don't get.
Michelle's talking.
You already have your packet?
Yeah. My at-home copy. I had no idea. Thank you.
If you're in the meeting, make sure you mute your mic. If you're in the meeting, you can hear.
It's gone now.
Mike is, he's gonna mute his audio.
View screen.
I got that. Just make sure you maximize it.
There we go. Now we got it.
Alright, and so I wanna thank you all for inviting us here.
Do you have your mic off on your?
This is off.
I don't, I'm
She
not
doesn't have hers on.
I'm not
Wait,
on Zoom.
That's projecting.
Audio
It's
coming
not
out.
me, I got nothing.
Oh, it's the one over there.
oh, it's not there, it's okay, there's one over there.
It's coming from that
Here comes
direction.
Jacob for the rescue.
Yeah, thanks.
We're in trouble.
We're looking
You're
exactly
worse than you know that guy.
Is it turned up?
He was telling me about how long he's been in town. I said, yeah, he just moved in a couple weeks ago. I'm hoping it's gonna be a good place to live.
And now we have
Oh, really? Oh,
sheet
yeah.
that actually has the map that we were
We're getting
doing
killed
last
on
night.
that.
Yeah, I have no
Good,
about
thank you.
copy of it.
Are we good?
But yeah.
All right, let's go.
He's walking straight
Great, I
now.
wanna thank you all for the opportunity to present to you tonight. I'm Jim Riley from the Wachusett Regional School District. I'm here with our Business Finance Director, Michelle Griseg. We have a couple school committee members with us, along with former school committee members, and then also Principal Andy Hall from Glenwood Elementary. So, hoping to share a little bit of the work we've done with the budget. There have been some recent developments that we'd like to share with you. And then pause, and if anyone has any questions, we'd be happy to answer them. And if we're unable to answer any of your questions, we certainly can get you information at a later date. The first thing I wanna say, and I really mean this when we talk about the town of Rutland, we're really thankful for the partnership that we've had. We know that, I know when I came in 4 years ago, there were some challenging financial situations that we had inherited. And there was some trust that needed to be regained. But I truly feel over the last 3 years, we've had consistent support from the town, even when the town itself had its own financial issues. And so we truly appreciate that and feel like it's made a difference in terms of the support we can give to the 3 schools in the town. I wanna let people know that we do remain aware that there are budgetary issues in the town, and I know at this time there's still potential for an override. And I just wanna assure you that when we propose a budget, we do keep that in mind. We also try to keep in mind what we need to do in terms of making the school system a better place for all of our students. But we try to make sure that whatever we request, they're the most pressing needs, and it's in support of our strategic plan. That's really the thing that drives all the growth in the district. I'm always happy to engage in concerns or debate with folks in terms of our priorities and things they wanna question us about, and I'm always welcoming additional data points if they feel like they're important to the discussion. Today I wanted to talk to you a little bit about our funding context in terms of the schools and in the context of the state. Our commitment to best financial practices that we think has made a difference over the last 3 years. The progress we've made over the last fiscal year due to the support of the budget. The budget development process we went through this past year, as well as the approved budget. The school committee approved a budget on March 9th this year. And we did present with them with some other additional changes we may be able to present later on this month. But what I'm gonna first present to you is the approved budget, and then share with you some possibilities that we hope are gonna come to fruition over the next few days. And then lastly, just provide some additional context, things that are happening here in Rutland that I want to share. And so the first thing I wanted to speak to you about is the fact that it's important whenever we talk about the school budget that we acknowledge the state funding context and the Chapter 70 foundation budget. Right now, Wachusett schools are at a substantial disadvantage. We are not funded at the same level as the majority of the districts in the state. And that puts us at a disadvantage. And it puts us in a situation when we continually have to ask more of our towns to help make up that difference. The other thing that's happening for the 3rd consecutive year is we're in hold harmless. And effectively what hold harmless means is that you have a reduction in students. And because of that, you have a reduction in your Chapter 70 funding. When this first happened to us 3 years ago, I think there were about 67% of the districts in the state that were in hold harmless. as of today, 85% of the districts in the state are in hold harmless. So it's not something that we're experiencing and we're kind of outliers. It's more the great majority of our districts are in this status. And we're hoping that now that it's reached this kind of critical mass, the state is gonna do something about it. Because right now, it's really not a fair funding formula, and it's very hard for school districts and towns to support the schools that we all want us to. When you look at our foundation budget, some of the data that kind of shows it's an issue is when you compare it to other similar districts. And one of the things we've done is try to pull a couple of data points to try to prove that point. So we're the 25th largest district in the state. We often don't think we're as large as we are because we're 5 towns and over such a great area, but our population, school population, is actually really quite big. But if you take the 50 largest districts in the state of Massachusetts, our per pupil, so what the state says it costs to educate a Wachusett student, we're 50th out of 50. If you take all the regional districts, excluding the vocational schools, we're 83rd out of 87. And if you look at our dark peers, basically the districts that we get compared to when they compare our performance data, we're 11th out of 11. And again, that's not town support, that's state support for the schools. But it kind of shows where we start as we build our budget, what level of support we've gotten from the state. And I think the question we always put out there is, does it really cost that much less to educate students in Wachusett? And I'd say no, especially when we're a regional school district. And so we have some expenses that other school districts don't typically have. And so what's particularly hard for us is that we're in hold harmless, and it's when we have really small declines in our population. When we originally were in hold harmless 3 years ago, we had lost, I believe it was less than 60 students. And so we're a district, at that time, we were around 6,700 students. And so you lose 60 students, and we had lost an increase of about, I think, $2.5 million. I'll show you the graph in a minute. And that's what's been particularly hard for us. It's happened year after year, and our Chapter 70 increases have declined almost every single year because of that. This year, in the first iteration of this budget, we're hopeful that the state's gonna go back and eventually give some more money like they have the last couple of years. But right now, we're getting $75 per student more than we did last year. And it does, I think it equates to about $490,000. And clearly, that's not an increase that we're not able to sustain our programming unless we ask our towns for more. And this is a graph that shows that. You know, when we, in FY24, when we were still receiving Chapter 70, we received an increase of almost $3.5 million. But over the last 3 years, when we've been held harmless, we've had an increase of $700,000, $1 million, and then this year, slightly less than $500,000. Despite that, one of the things we've really tried to focus on is making sure we've made the best use of the money that we have received, both from the state and from our towns. And there are a couple of practices I think that we're proud of that hopefully show that we are taking our financial responsibilities to the town seriously. And some of those are our excess and deficiency growth. And so on the next slide or two, I'll show you what our excess and deficiency has grown as. But as recently as I think 4 years ago, we only had a couple of $100,000 in excess and deficiency. And excess and deficiency is important because if there is an unforeseen financial need in the district, it's really your only safety net. And so it's basically our reserve. And at a budget in a district our size, it really only takes a couple of out-of-district placements or an unforeseen expense, and you probably need at least a reserve. We estimate of at least 2%, and at that point we were down to less than 0.5%. And so if something happened, we really would have been in some financial turmoil. The other thing we've done is we've used our circuit breaker fund. Circuit breaker is what you get in terms of reimbursement from some of your students who have been placed in out-of-district placements. It's basically the state's way of saying we know this is an extraordinary expense, and they're trying to give us some support for that expense. We were building budgets on what we were hoping to receive in circuit breaker, and so it was what we were estimating or hoping that we would receive. And that's not, again, not a good financial practice. You're hoping for money, not money that you actually have in the bank and you have received from the state. We were fortunate, and again, we were building budgets on circuit breaker. I think circuit breaker had been down to a couple of hundreds of thousands of dollars. But when Michelle came in, we made the commitment to try to make sure we got circuit breaker and used it the way it's intended. It's actually, it's meant to be used when you have actual receipts, and that's typically the year after you have received them. And that's a commitment that's paid off. This year, what you'll see, and I think I had shared this when I came and visited, I think I came in maybe November of this year, that I thought we were gonna be able to offer more E&D and circuit breaker to offset the budget. And this year, you'll see that our circuit breaker contribution is about $1.4 million more than it has in the past. The other thing we've done is we've optimized our Medicaid reporting. Again, you'll see that as a revenue in this year's budget. Medicaid reporting, as recently, I think as 6 or 7 years ago, we got audited, and we did not have the receipts or what we had put in for Medicaid reimbursement. When they did the audit, it was deemed that we had put in for too much and actually owed some money back to that process. That hasn't happened over the last 5 years. In fact, our Medicaid receipts have been at least $750,000. And we're in great standing in terms of that reimbursement process. And then lastly, what I'd say is we've done a much better job in terms of interest earning. And so then when we first came in, we were earning interest amounts of about less than $50,000 a year. Now it's several hundred thousands of dollars a year. And that's in part because we've been able to earn interest off our E&D and our circuit breaker. But again, it puts us in a much more healthy position, and we're able to use it as revenue to offset the budget at the end of the year for the towns. In terms of financial practices, one of the things we're able to do as well is make sure we're going through our appropriations on a monthly basis. I think a lot of times in the district in years past, there were surprises in June, and there were a lot of transfers that were happening because spending wasn't monitored as closely as it needed to be. At this point, at business and finance meetings on a monthly basis, we go through appropriations, and if they're out of balance, we're required by school committee to make those transfers. And so there's a lot more confidence in terms of where we are in all our budget lines, and we have a much better idea if we have to make adjustments during the school year. I think a lot of that has resulted in our ability to make sure when we come forth with a budget, we have great confidence that this is actually what we need, okay? And it's why in the past 2 years, we've been able to recommend to school committee that if there is additional Chapter 70 funds giving to the school and the state changes its approach, we've recommended the past 2 years, and to school committee's credit, they're the ones who actually approve it. School committee has voted to give that additional money to the towns, and last year that was approximately $500,000 that offset town assessments. This year, there's a new development and there's a new financial practice that we're hopeful is gonna have a pretty large impact on the budget that has already been passed. And that is that we have a proposed health insurance funding arrangement with our PEC that can result in pretty substantial savings in terms of this year's budget. And so on March 16th, this past Monday, our PEC, our Public Employee Committee, voted to conditionally approve a new health insurance funding arrangement. And in that arrangement, if it's finalized, and we still have an MOA that we need to sign with them, the district's benefits and insurance appropriation may be reduced by $2 million. Okay, so it'll be a substantial reduction in the budget that has been passed. We're actively working with the PEC at this time to resolve any remaining concerns. Honestly, at this point, it's really legal. You know, we just need to make sure. I think in principle, we're fine with the things they're asking us to do. They just have to make sure that they're in agreement with the PEC statute. And ultimately, I think it's important that school committee is the one who approves the school budgets. We did meet with them late on Tuesday night. We called an emergency meeting just so they knew that we would like to present with them another iteration of the budget if this agreement goes through, and share that potentially changed draft of the school budget with towns as we were starting presentations. We did it last night with Holden. We're gonna do it with you tonight as well. And then pending the approval with the PEC, ask for school committee's final vote if they'll approve these changes to the budget. So those are two things that still have to happen, but we're excited about the possibility of some of the changes to the budget that we can present to you tonight. And so one of the things I wanna share with you tonight, and I think it's important for us to share, is that this year, we're gonna be sharing more E&D as well. And so much like there's been an increase in circuit breaker, the recommendation and the approval by school committee was to share $1 million of our E&D with the town. And I think what this shows you in this graph is the approach we've been trying to take to make sure we have the appropriate reserves in place in case there are some financial situations that we need to balance in the district. But also, whenever possible, use our E&D to help support the towns as well. And this shows, as recently as 3 years ago, we had about 1% in E&D, and at that time, we couldn't offer it to the towns. But the next year, we had a healthier balance, and we gave forth $500,000, and it allowed us also to increase E&D to about 1.6%. And then this year, we proposed to school committee, and school committee approved that we give $1 million of E&D to the towns to reduce town assessments. And so appreciate their support. And the good thing for us is we also got that minimum amount up to 2%. And we really feel like that's as much as we can give this year, because honestly, the school committee should be, the school department should be keeping 2% just to protect itself. It's a couple $1 million. And when you have a budget as large as we do, it doesn't take much for you, a 1% change in the budget, and it's something you have to watch really closely. And so, there are other things that we've done recently, and actually we got great news today that I actually haven't even shared with school committee yet. We received 2 earmarks, and originally we had received an earmark from Senator Durant for $200,000 in concrete work that we were doing at the high school, and we received words from Representative Ferguson today. We're gonna get an additional $200,000, and we got an earmark for circuit breaker transportation. And so I just wanna thank both of them. That's $400,000 that the district has not traditionally received, but we received due to their efforts, both in the Senate and in the Congress. So we just very much appreciate their support and just wanted to acknowledge that here tonight. It is our intent, and we have a meeting with them in, I believe it's a week or 2 weeks from Monday, and they're gonna request some earmarks again, because that only helps us in terms of support some of the needs across the district, and then those savings again ultimately are realized by the towns. We participated in school choice, and so for last year, for the first time, I believe in maybe 7 or 8 years, school committee approved that the district participate in school choice. School choice means that if you have extra room in your classrooms, you can take in students from other districts. They can apply, in the school district receives it's $5,000 for every student that they let in. The idea is that you're not creating additional classrooms because you don't necessarily make money on it, but it is very financially an astute move if you're adding students to classrooms where you have room. We only did that at the high school last year, and so we did that in the freshman and sophomore classes, so it helped bring some balance to class sizes that have been lower than they have been traditionally. Happy to report that school committee approved school choice again in FY27. This past year brought us more than $100,000. Our hope is that it could bring us up to $200,000 this next year. And then the last thing, and we haven't talked about this a lot openly in terms of, we always talk about some positions that we're hoping to add to the district as we move forward. And we always talk about efficiencies, but I always want people to understand what that really is. And what that really is we also make some hard choices every year. And we look at positions and ask ourselves, do we still need this position? And over the past 2 years, we have reduced 14 positions across the district. And I share that because I just want people to know it's not always about we need this, we need that. We are trying to support some of these changes on our own, and they don't always see the bottom line of the budget. And I'll be honest with you, that's not a typical practice in school districts. It's like, shh, everything's gonna be okay. You usually don't see school districts reduce positions unless there's a financial crisis. And we're trying to get into that best financial practice where we ask ourselves if we need a position, and if we don't, but we need a position somewhere else, we try to self-fund it. And I think I just wanted to share that because I think people sometimes look at what we're saying we're gonna add in terms of new positions, they don't realize a lot of those moves are actually supported by things we're doing within the district, and it's not additional money that's necessarily tagged onto the budget. And so wanted to quickly just share some of the things that we had talked about adding in the budget, and then specifically what its impact been at Rutland. And so you had 1.5 interventionists added at the Naquag school last year. And we had interventionists were teaching positions, that were added to support primarily students in grades 1 and 2 and kids who might be struggling, and these are teachers who are licensed and they work and push into classrooms to provide additional support. NAQUAG got 1.5 because they serve the most students in those grades, and so the decision was made, most schools got 1, but NAQUAG got 1.5 because they had more students to service and we wanted to make sure they could fulfill the model. One of the things we got this year as a budget request is the principal, Christina, asked for an additional 0.5 so she could go to 2 full interventionists, and we were able to put that into this year's budget. So it's one of the things that you'll see that we added this past year. Also, in addition to that, we had STEAM positions that were added at both NAQUAG and at Glenwood. And so these are the positions where we added an extra special, all right, it allowed us to meet a contractual requirement in terms of giving a daily prep to teachers, but it also allowed us to address science standards that otherwise we weren't able to do, bless you. And if you talk to most kids in those grade levels, those classes are some of their favorites. And so they basically get to get their hands dirty. And they get to work on things that, you know, hands-on experience of learning, doing experiments, things that are fun, and things that we probably don't do enough of in school. And so I think both have been really a wonderful success. And it's just nice to know, like I say to you, these are things that directly happened in the Rutland schools because of you passing the budget last year. And the other things that happened this past year is you have team chair services at all 3 schools. And basically what this is these are professionals who run your team meetings. And so your special education meetings, we used to always say we had assistant principals at all our schools, but I'm gonna be honest with you, we really didn't. We had people who ran special education meetings, and then part of the time they got to be assistant principals. And so really for the first time ever in the district, you have dedicated assistant principals, and then you have people who are actually specialized in special education, who are running these team meetings, making decisions with families about the supports that kids need. So we feel like, again, it's something that we continue to evolve with and we're hoping to make better every year. But that's been an important improvement across all the district schools this past year. And so what did we do this past year, and where do we sit? And I think the first place, just to acknowledge, is we're still continuing to struggle with the state's determination about what it takes to educate students. And we feel like those calculations are seriously flawed. And it's only getting worse by the Chapter 70 hold harmless status that we're in with 85% of the other districts. However, we did come together with what we thought was the best budget that we could present in terms of continuing with our strategic plan. And the one that was supported and passed by school committee was an increase of 4.44%. That had a total increase in town assessments of 5.84%. And then the Rutland assessment increase at this time was 7.5%. The situation in Rutland is you continue to be taxed by the state in terms of their determination of what you can pay towards the school budget. And then also, even though Rutland had a small decrease in the number of students, their decrease wasn't as large as some of the other towns. And so your percentage share actually increased in terms of the town budget. This next graph we put together, because one of the things we're trying to make sure we educate and make sure that we share with people in the public is, you know, this is the lowest budget, even before any changes that might be applied to it. This is the lowest budget that we've put together in the last 4 years. Even so, the increase in terms of town assessments is the second largest. And so even though the request or the increase in the school budget is much less actually in some cases than it's been in the past, the percentage that the towns are paying is even higher. And it's because what the town assessment increase isn't always dependent just on what our increase is in the budget. There are other factors that are influencing that, primarily determined by the state. And so with that, you know, we are still trying to move forward. And, you know, what I have to share with you here is the reason why. And last year I shared our data and our support for why we were asking for interventionists. And really the reason why was because our MCAS data isn't what I would hope it to be. And I think what this shows is although we're doing better than the state really doesn't do well at all. And I would say that although we are headed in the right direction, so if you look at the graph, you can see we've made a 4% gain in terms of all students in English language arts, and these are our MCAS scores for grades 3 through 8. And what it is they're meeting or exceeding expectations, and that's the goal, right? You want kids to either be meeting the expectations or exceeding. And we've made progress, that's improved by 4%, gone from 49% to 53%, and it is better than the state average, which is 42. But again, I would want it to be a lot better.
So does this mean that only 53% of the kids met or exceeded expectations in the thing?
Yes.
We think that's good.
No,
Well, no, not you guys, but the state. It's 49%.
So,
And that's good?
no, this
State's
is,
42.
this is, in my opinion, this is flawed, because this does not take into account kids with special needs
Well, it does on the
that
next
are on
column.
Yeah, and
IEPs,
you know,
right?
and
Well,
yeah,
doesn't
no,
that go to the next
So-
column?
they're included in the high.
They're
These
included
guys-
in this.
They're not included in the high needs?
They are, I'm gonna
And
talk
they
about
also-
Well,
that.
so
Okay.
separate, so separate them. It's still not good. I don't know how anybody, not you guys, but the state's like dancing around. That's not a good number.
Yep.
It's horrible.
It's how we feel too. And I think again, like, I'm happy, we're showing progress, you know, and same thing, and that's for English language arts. In math, you'll see an increase from 54% to 56%. Again, we're doing better than the state average at 41%, but we would like to do better.
Does anyone remember what a high water mark was back in the day? Weren't we way better, like 80 something?
We're still not, I don't know if we've ever been up to 8. I would say that even the highest performing districts in the state are probably low 60s. Okay,
But why are we wasting our time with the test, doctor?
well,
I mean, it's like the perfect reason for us to waste money. Not you guys, but the state is making us on an unforced mandate, a forced mandate to waste money on this, and everybody's failing it, but it's all good. Woo! It's crazy. It's not you. I'm
I
not,
gotcha.
but this is a waste of our money.
I think for us, what it helps is in terms of where kids are in terms of the state standards. And I think what they set as a benchmark, or I think they're genuine in feeling like they want 100% of the students to achieve this mark. What I would like to see is us to get, if possible, into some of the best districts in the state. That's what I aspire to. What
I
would-
congratulate you that you're better than the state average, but it's still,
Yep. I think one of the things that's hard for us, and this is true for all districts across the state, we are still not to the level we were before the pandemic. And that's true for all districts in the state.
Anybody?
Huh?
no, I don't think anybody is.
No, nobody is, I think, to my knowledge. And so it's why though it is so important for us to keep on getting those learning gaps for kids. It's one of the reasons why we wanted the interventionist positions, because, you know, unfortunately, a lot of our kids missed a year plus of school. And people did the best they could when we were remote, but it wasn't the same. And so it really, for me, our first goal is to get back to where we were. And then hopefully we have some systems in place that's even gonna get us better. And so we mentioned, and you called it out, and that was actually perfect. The data I wanna talk to you about today, and really what we're trying to focus on in this budget, is our high need students. And high need students does include special education students. And so these are students who are on IEPs, these are your English learners, and these are your kids who come from, lower socioeconomic households, okay? So families that are financially struggling, all right? And so these are the families and these are the kids who I think we all root for, right? And the bottom line is, again, we do better than the state, but when you look at the difference between their experience and all of our students, it's substantially different. And again, I'm glad we're making progress, but I don't think it's nearly enough. And one of the things that we're trying to focus on is making sure we've got supports in place to help those kids have the experience they deserve, included,
Absolutely.
and then also hopefully get some better results, okay? And so that's what you're gonna hear me talk about right now, and that's the focus really of this year's budget.
What is ELA was what?
English language
English,
arts,
oh,
yeah, so it's basically English and math.
I just wanna make sure.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. And so there are a couple of things, you know, we've tried to do, and one of the things I'll point out to you is much like the most positions in this year's budget the town that is gonna benefit the most if this budget passes is Rutland. Okay, and so these are the positions that we're at, and again, like I would remind you, like these aren't just necessarily things added to the budget, we will be doing other things, looking at positions that we no longer need. But one of them is a coordinator position, so we have positions where, much like our team chairs, these are people who help coordinate special education services. They oversee and help support our team chairs at this point. More and more every year, these people have been used more to support. We have some programs in our district by Devereaux. And so we have up to 85 students who get serviced in these programs. And there are students who come from all over the state, but because they go to school or they come and reside in programs that reside in one of our 5 towns, we're obligated to provide them services, which we're happy to do, and we do get some money back from DESE for those services. But we weren't, when this began, we weren't servicing 85 students, we were servicing far fewer.
You get the equivalent of what you get for a regular student from the state for these students?
Yeah, so it's not exact, no.
No.
And so you can put in for really kind of the case management services of it. And some of these students go to our schools, but a lot of them actually go to other placements, which we're not responsible for. They're paid by whatever their home district is, and basically we get reimbursed for some of the services we provide. The situation we were running into though was, we didn't plan to be providing for these services, and so we were taking people away from what their actual duties were to support residents and students in the schools, and so we need another position that's gonna allow us to do that. And so, some of the cost of that is gonna be supported by the payment we'll get from other districts. But the big thing for us is these positions support our schools, and that's why they were established, and to make sure that that's what's happening. Again, we're happy to provide the service, we support the programs, but it's also important that we have people to support the kids in our neighborhood schools. I think the other thing we're trying to do, and these are actually, both these positions are in Rutland schools, and so one's at Naquag and one is gonna be at Glenwood, is to support students of higher need, sometimes when they attend our district-wide programs, but sometimes because they need additional academic support. We're gonna have a K inclusion teacher, and so this is kind of a similar model what we use in our preschool. And what it is you have a smaller class and you have an additional person to support, and so it's kids who might need some more support to be successful. And you have both peers and because these are regular teachers and regular curriculum, but you have lower numbers, and then you also have some additional staff to support learning. I can tell you, both my daughters were in these programs. We had similar classrooms when I was in Leominster. Wonderful experience, really great classrooms. The other position that we're adding is an intensive instructional support teacher. This is a position that is gonna be at Glenwood. Again, it is to support students and to better push them in to classrooms so they can have an academic experience. One of the things the research is pretty clear at is that if you give kids support and you put them around peers and you challenge them with a curriculum, a lot of times they meet that goal and they surprise you. And that's how they learn best. And so we're trying to make sure that happens as often as it can. It's also, and I forgot this earlier, one of the big recommendations when DESE has come in and looked at our programs, the one thing they said to us is that you can do a better job including kids. And this is our effort to make sure that that's happening. Okay, we had programs that do a nice job, but a lot of times they're substantially separate. So those kids aren't maybe joining their peers unless it's for gym or music or other opportunities. And then there were kids who could do more than that, and we didn't always have the staffing and the programs to provide that. And so this is an attempt for us to get to that next step, as we should. We're also expanding co-teaching in some places. We're also adding reading support teachers. Again, this is a position that's going to Houghton and Sterling, but also to Glenwood in Rutland. And so these are specialists who help support reading. It's an additional special education position. And again, hopefully it's gonna be a support for the students at Glenwood. That's why Andy's here. No, he's not. He's here just because he's being a good guy.
So did you say you wanted questions on these sections or wait till the end?
I'm fine either way, however you wanna do it.
Are you okay?
Question?
Go, yeah, absolutely.
So when we spoke, first of all, I wanna say, again, thank you for coming and explaining this, because you guys came in November. And that's the earliest we ever talked to anybody, I don't know how many years in the past, and it was excellent for us to sit down as the finance committee, be able to do the family stuff and down the road, to at least be looking at. one of our questions was, because Deborah was on this sheet, one of our questions was, how is it, how are the, if there are students from Deborah that go to the district, how is it handled? Who pays the bill? Where are those numbers included? We asked that question and.
They're considered our, if they, so at Devereaux, sorry, actually, sorry. At Devereaux, we're programmatically responsible for all those students. However, they're foster students that could be, another town is financially responsible for them. So there could be someone from Devereaux that goes to one of our schools.
Okay, but
That
who,
we're-
so
we're
are they
responsible.
included in our account? Do we pay for them, or
They would-
that other district pays for them?
If they come here, they're well, special ed is totally different. It depends if they're special ed or regular ed. Special ed students in our financial count and the foundation budget is a percentage of our overall students. It's not an actual number of special ed students for both in district and out of district.
My understanding though is the sending district will be charged for placement.
How do we get paid if they're not from a
So
district?
to answer your question, so whatever town they came
Whatever
from
district they
will be
live in.
charged for the placement.
How about a separate
Either
country?
be our own school, okay, and where we're providing services or our
They
programs,
still have to live in a
or
district, they have to have
if
an
they're sent
address in
to
the
another
district.
program. We end up doing the management of those cases, so we're the ones who run the IEP meetings, we're the ones who bring everyone together, they have what they call bid meetings. And so we do a lot of that stuff, and that's what we can charge back as well. But in terms of the actual, when they're attending school, that tuition gets charged back to whatever community they came from, if that makes sense. So we're not footing the bill for that piece of it.
Okay, but
Does it get charged at the same rate as we're taking in students from out of district, or is it the same rate that the in-town students are being charged?
It's a higher rate than what we get for school choice students.
Okay, that's
So,
correct.
yeah.
All right, that, I just wanted to make, I figured that was the case, but I just wanted to make sure there was no misunderstanding on that.
But that number's paid by some other entity. So now what if, and I don't know if they do or not, but let's say Deborah gets an out-of-state person, and they stay there on campus, and then they're sent to school. Does Rutland pay that bill?
No, I'm not aware, and I'll find out for you, and I'll send a follow-up to everybody. I'm not aware of the district paying for any of those placements in terms of
Okay.
the actual placement in any of our schools. I believe we're reimbursed for all of it regardless.
Okay,
But I will find out for you and I'll send you that clarification.
Yep.
Most of the kids in the programs have special education placements. And if that's the case, then they're being paid for by the other district.
which is okay, that's understandable.
Yeah.
So I guess the question, if you could answer it, and I'm wondering about it, and Tommy's going down the road, but I'm gonna go further down the road. If people are not from the United States that are at Devereaux, and they come to our school district, which is great, I'm glad we give them the opportunity. I wanna know how we're getting paid for it.
I don't think we have anybody out of state, and I don't believe we have anybody out of country. And so these are typically placements that you would get. Typically, they may be involved with another agency, or they might be at risk. It all depends. And so I'm not aware of that, and I'm just being honest, and I'm not aware of any out of state students. I believe they're all in-state
I'm not
students.
sure either, but I
Yeah.
just,
No,
yeah.
If you could research that, because we've been told that may not be that may not be the case. And we're just wondering, where does it come back? And then I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. I'm happy to ask. I'm not an expert, I'll be honest with you, on the process. I really had learned more about the case management piece even this year.
I do.
Sure.
And it's maybe to help us with maybe some institutional knowledge that might be out there. Way back when Devereaux's school, it was a school, not a Devereaux Foundation, it was a Devereaux school. The children stayed there, they went to school there. I knew teachers that taught there. How many of the kids leave the school to come to the district schools or other schools? Because I believe my sister works for a district school, not this one, and we have a child that goes there. So when did that shift happen, first of all, that Devereaux stopped, and again, because we've asked this question, nobody seems to know the answer, but maybe you do. So I guess it's a couple of parts is, when did the shift happen that it wasn't a self-contained school, they moved to the district? How many are coming, if they are? And then I've got some, you said tuition was reimbursed at a little bit higher than school choice. What is that school choice?
So school choice is $5,000. What I was saying is that it's not the school choice rate. And I believe what they do is they make a determination of how much the placement is. And you know what I mean? And so I can try to get you the figures.
Well,
I
I
think it's
think
an-
we would like to know,
Yeah.
we're interested in knowing what is the, what is it costing Rutland? And it sounds like
To be,
others to be
If
sending
it's costing
students.
anything, right?
I don't think it's costing.
Right.
I think
How
where it
can
costs
we,
the
how
district.
can our per student be in the, like, over, like, 5 digits, but we're just getting over 5,000 for, I'm, the number,
in terms of-
I'm making up the numbers because they're not being said, so I'm going by words that you've used and trying to fill in the number.
So I'd say a couple things. For school choice, it's a flat rate. That's $5,000, okay? It's why it would never make sense to have school choice students to actually like create another classroom, right? Because to your point, we're receiving a lot more money to educate students. At a certain point though, like I think with school choice, it's always, it's the best is to kind of take the example of a plane, okay? If you have a plane and it's going to do a certain flight path, and you can accommodate 200 passengers, but the plane is only filled with 180. If you add 20 more, whatever you're charging for tickets, it's worth it, right?
It's worth it, but it's not
100%.
It's not all, because you're feeding them your.
Right, but I would just say, it would never make sense to 200 people want to have another flight, but they're only going to pay that minimum ticket price. It's not worth it to add that additional flight. And so that's the best analogy I can use in terms of school choice and how it works. To my knowledge, and I will research it for you and I'll be happy to send you this information. I do not believe we're losing money in terms of servicing students, in terms of placements in schools, and the great majority of students are actually in placements, not necessarily in our schools, okay?
But you had some concern at the meeting at Wachusett when we were up in the library. You mentioned this exact issue with,
I think my concern was that what originally was one school has turned into multiple programs.
okay,
And the number of students has gotten to the point where potentially if both programs are filled, I believe it could be up to 75 to 85 students. And that's a lot. And we did not have the capacity to service and do case management services for those students the way we were staffed. And so it's just that situation is something that we needed to address. And so I think where it's been a hardship on the district is we weren't, it's like you're providing a service that you didn't
it's like,
create. It's not like we
it's like an
created a
unfunded
program.
mandate. And we're getting a mandate
Funding
that
the staff
they're
Absolutely.
not funding
for
the
you to
staff.
service.
Totally unfunded.
Absolutely. And so.
It's not fair.
We have
No,
to
it
absorb it.
is a challenge. And so for us, that's why, again, this position would be partially funded by the services that we can get from it, and that's not gonna be their only responsibility. But what was clear is we couldn't keep on using our staffing level and provide that service and not have it impact the experience of students in our towns. I am not concerned, but I'll get you the facts, that we're losing money or towns are losing money or paying for the placements of these students. I think it's much more of a management issue for the district that we need to address and to make sure we have the resources to allocate to the kids who are in our towns.
And
You know, that's the
do you
biggest thing.
know why that shift happened from,
You know,
I know it's before your time, but I didn't know if conversations.
yeah, well, I think that, honestly, I think that the program found the location attractive. And, and so who knows why programs choose certain towns? You know, we're certainly not the only district or town that has these types of programs. And so I don't know why. My guess is, why did they expand? Because it was a successful model for them, and we probably gave them pretty good services, to be honest with you. It's all, I know the people who are doing this work for the district are excellent, you know, and I think that's part of our desire to get somebody to do that work specifically, because we'd like them to be excellent for the kids they were hired for.
I guess it just at some point, probably before anybody in this room, that had to have been an agreement to send students who are already in a school to the district. I mean, I think some of us were just curious on what that backstory was, when it happened, how it happened, and
Well, I'm
A
curious about
decision
how
would have
the money
needed
is,
to
and
be
like you
made.
said, if we lose it, we're not, I guess, one of my critiques, so whatever those students are, it's not, if Rutland has 100 kids, we're not saying, okay, and then, but now it's 105 because it's Devereaux.
No.
They're under a separate program, and our numbers don't reflect 105, they reflect the 100. But somehow, because of what it cost you in the overall picture, there's a drain there still.
Definitely a resource strain.
Right.
You know, I think the money's probably gonna end up being a wash in
Right.
terms of what we do, but what we know is we didn't have the resources to provide the service, and not have it impact our own, the original reason why these people were hired. So that's why we're proposing the change.
Jim, can I add something about school choice really fast? So the other thing is with the $5,000 that we get for school choice children, even though it costs more than $5,000 per student, we also pay as the district $5,000 to other schools for anyone in our district that is going out of the district. So if we didn't allow school choice, we're paying that $5,000 for any kid that is out of the district
And not getting it back.
and not reciprocating, so we're getting zero trade-off. So it's not giving us money, but it's helping us lose
So is
less
it
money.
trade-off 50-50?
No, well, that's why we're trying to encourage the school choice, but we can't, you never wanna create another classroom, it's about filling empty slots. If a classroom averages 20 kids, that, I'm just spitballing that number, and there's only 16, it's like maybe add 3 or 4 school choice to fill that classroom, but not go over. You don't wanna crowd it with the school choice kids, does that make sense?
We only added school choice this year at the high school, and then again, we've gotten permission to look at other schools, but we're very careful and we would never do it if it put classrooms at a level that we didn't think was beneficial to all the students.
If I may, just to piggyback on that, because I've been at some of the school committee meetings where you've had these conversations, I think the school committee and administration has been very cognizant going forward with school choice, and not just the impact of the current year, but the forecast for the remaining time of education that student may have. So if they're looking at potentially offering an elementary, they wanna make sure that that's not gonna, elementary might be okay, but that then it's going to have a negative impact at middle school or high school. So I appreciate all that foresight, because sometimes that used to not happen either. It would be, we have all these seats at this year, and then suddenly there's an influx and we're overcrowded. And so I think school committee and administration is very, very cognizant of making sure that it's a sustainable addition of seats and not a 1 year to create problems down the road.
I have one question. School choice, you're saying we get 5,000 for every kid. Is that 5,000 above what it costs?
No.
No.
It's $5,000.
Yep.
And that's all it costs to, and is that all it costs to educate them?
No.
Oh,
Well, what I would say,
in the eyes of the state.
I would say you have to look at it more about
I'm just
with the
asking,
cost of-
I understand, I'm asking the question, we get 5,000 flat fee for somebody that comes in. Versus if I had children, it would cost more. Okay, just wanna make sure I understood that correctly.
And if it is a special ed student, we do get a special ed increment.
Yep.
So if it is a student that comes in with special needs, the sending town will pay the increment
No,
for the
I
special
knew that,
education
I just was
services.
wondering, just in general.
So you could get more than 5,000 to cover special ed needs.
Yeah, let's,
I think we look at it like classroom cost, right? And so if the cost to say have a classroom of 20 students instead of 16, adding for those 4 students, are the costs covered by $20,000 or $16,000 or $20,000 for those 4 additional students? Yes. You know what I mean? But would it be covered for the entire classroom for $5,000 per student? No. If that kind of makes sense.
Okay.
The other positions we're looking to add in this budget are counseling positions, and those are slated for Glenwood and Central Tree. The reason why Glenwood and Central Tree is right now they both only have a counselor at each. And Dave Canacchioli over at Central Tree has been asking for a counselor for 2.5 years now. We were able to add additional counselors at Mount View, and so it's only right that we're able to do that at Central Tree as well. And then Glenwood, some of our other elementary schools that house programs have an additional counselor. Glenwood has only had one, and so they will get a second. And so for those reasons, those are really kind of some of the positions we look at equity. And so there was a condition that exists in other towns that we hadn't taken care of Rutland yet, and so we're making sure that happens this year in Rutland in both of those schools. The other positions, the NAQUAG interventionists are going from 1.5 to 2, so that's an increase of half a person. It just means that that person now will be full-time. And at Glenwood was the only school that did not have an interventionist. And they didn't because the program was for students in K1 and 2, and Glenwood serves students 3 through 5. However, Andy had put in his request, in his budget request, and then we thought about it, really wasn't right that Glenwood was the only elementary school in the district that didn't have the benefit, because these positions not only support students, but they also kind of help support all teachers and their ability to support struggling learners and look at data. And so he made the case that I'd like to pilot this position and try it out for the grade levels 3 to 5. And so it seemed like the right place to make that happen. And so that position is going to Glenwood in this budget if it passes. And so those are the positions that you'd see this year that would directly benefit the Rutland schools.
I appreciate the emphasis on the elementary school, because I think I've had conversations about focusing on the special needs of our youngest population in hopes of hitting those interventions early and not creating a lifelong need for that. And so I appreciate the push to begin to address some of that.
That's the emphasis. I mean, I think if you look at one of the things I'd argue education has always gotten wrong is we tend to provide a lot more services near the end of a child's education journey. And even when you look at the state funding, they fund high schools at a higher level than they do at elementary, which to me is crazy, and that's nothing against high school. But you see the biggest bang for your buck. That's why the preschool program is so important, right? That's when kids make their greatest gain. And if you can really invest in them, in many cases, they're not going to need the additional supports as they continue on in their career, and they're going to be more fully included. So it's far better for everybody, and that really has been our focus. And we feel like this is going to bring us to where we want to be at the elementary level. We feel like we might look eventually, as time goes on, and I don't think these would be additions to the budget, to maybe have some other interventionist positions like we're going to do at Glenwood if it's a successful model, to try to see if those are positions for grades 3 through 5, but otherwise, I feel like we've kind of finally gotten elementary to the point where I'm hoping we're going to continue to see some of the gains we've seen in the last couple of years.
So if I count up, we've added 11.5 new positions.
If that's what's on that sheet, yeah.
Okay.
But I would say that's not what the net is on the budget.
Nope.
Right? Because I would say to you every year, we're also in many cases over the last 2 years, we've averaged 7 being removed.
No, I get it.
And
It's just
so-
11.5 new positions if I add up this right.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, and I would say, I think 5.5 or 6.5 of them are in Rutland.
Yep.
Mr. Riley, if I might for a minute here, you pointed out a couple of different instances of the principal asked for XYZ. Can you comment a little bit about where the principals think our Rutland schools are and what you weren't able to put in this budget that they asked for?
Yep. And so for Rutland, I'm not aware, and this didn't happen, and Michelle can talk about this a little bit when she actually talks about what the approved budget was. And so we meet with every single principal, and we look at their requests, whether it be from their actual operational budget, and then typically there's also a section of our budget sheets, and you should be able to access them. If you haven't, I'll send them to you, and you can see actually what the principals specifically requested. And they'll also at times request specific positions. I could be wrong, but I think I might be right. I think we actually fulfilled, if not all, nearly all of the positional requests in Rutland. We did not do that everywhere. I can tell you, we're more likely to say no than yes. I think, though, that the requests that were made by the principals were supported by data and also in alignment with what we were trying to focus on, which was supporting struggling learners and making sure that we had equity across the district. And so, for an example, Dave saying at Central Tree, hey, I really need another guidance person. And it doesn't make sense that I've got 3 grade levels and I think we all know, 12 to 14-year-olds can be an interesting age range to be working with. And I really need another person to help support my kids. And he also has an in-district program. And so that was a position that was improved. Christina Belzarski at Naquag. Christina's big concern was to try to get that extra half position because she felt like the half position, she wasn't able to incorporate that person fully. They'd be in the school for a few hours on certain days and then they were shared with Thomas Prince. And so her idea was she could service more kids in more classrooms, and then also that person could help support data meetings and other things that were happening across the school. And to us, that made sense. That fit with our vision in terms of supporting struggling learners, so that position was approved. Andy's here, so he can tell you about the positions that he had requested. But for him, he had requested some special education support teachers, so both the academic support position and then also the reading specialist. And then also he asked if he could have an interventionist and an additional guidance support. And so those positions were approved. And so I think, what I would say is, and I don't want to speak for the principals, they could speak better than me, but they were looking to provide social emotional support, specifically at Glenwood and at Central Tree. Christina wanted to continue her model of providing early intervention to her students, right? Trying to give those kids at those critical grade levels 1 and 2 timely academic support. And for Andy, more resolved specifically around special education. So social emotional needs, but also supporting kids who already were on IEPs and either trying to include them more or provide them with directed support in their specific area needs, which a lot of them were revolving around reading. Yeah, and so, thank you. And so I forgot for Dave, he asked for a halftime secretary and then also an additional ELA teacher. We did not put those in the budget, okay? We didn't put in the halftime secretary because we did not approve any clerk requests across the district. And so basically, if I can't provide a position in every school, I can't give it to one school. I tell you that clerks are an issue we have to look at. We typically have one clerk or secretary in each school. A lot of districts have more than that. One of the things we're looking to do to improve, because one of the things that's frustrating for families is our secretaries don't work over the summer. And so looking at potentially, and we're going to be entering into contract negotiations with them, try to make them more available over the summer so they can do some of their duties, because they are stressed and there are a lot and they do have a lot of responsibilities in the schools. And so it's not that that's not a reasonable request, it's just not something that we can fulfill at this time, so we didn't need that one. And then Janice also said to me that he requested an additional ELA teacher. When we looked at and talked to Dave about his numbers, that wasn't one thing that we thought we could support with the data right now. All right, in terms of class sizes, they're fairly in line with what they have at Mount View in terms of what they're servicing. And one of the things you're gonna see next year when I come and speak to you, I hope to speak to you about middle school and talking about elementary school for the past 2 years. Next year, the hope is that what I'll talk to you about is the middle school experience, okay? And looking at things like, at Central Tree, you can take German and you can take Spanish, but you can't take French. Is there a way that everybody has that experience? The district used to have health teachers. We don't anymore. Should we, right? Or should we combine health teachers with phys ed, and should we look at things like that? And so you're gonna see us talking about the middle school experience next, because I think we've kind of gotten to the point where we're hoping to be in terms of elementary, and look at some of those issues too. And I think Dave knows that. And so if that time it's warranted, or when we make schedule changes, we need to look at staffing at that time, and we'll do that. But yeah, I would say, and they deserved it. I will say that first of all. But I think the Rutland principals got probably 90% of what they asked for. And I would say across the district, that is not what happened. But also because in some cases they had gotten some of those positions before. And then also because in some cases their needs weren't as high as the needs of some of our schools. I think one of the things I'll openly share with you is, we're trying to support the students in Glenwood because we want their achievement to be on par with all of the schools across the district, okay? And I personally very much believe in Andy and the changes he's made at the school, and I think it's important when a principal and the staff are combining together to look at their practice and make changes, that you also give them the resources to be successful. And that is, to answer the question, that's one of our focuses this year, is to support the schools that are invested in making change and giving them the resources so they can get to the next level of success.
Continue right along.
One more quick question, I'm sorry, hopefully it's easy. Do you have any idea just across the district, a percentage of kids that are in special ed programs?
Yeah, I'm gonna say we're around 18%, but I may be off.
That also covers the whole range of special education services, not just.
I can look it up for you, I'm sorry.
No, that's
This is the worst day to ask me, because I have so many numbers in my mind right now. But we can share.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
And I apologize, I should know.
I think we have a little over 1,000, so what would that be?
Just under 20.
I think we have a little over 1,000. We only have about our expensive ones, we're under 60 on the out-of-district placements,
District, okay.
which is pretty standard. Like,
special ed.
as far as when they're doing the foundation budget, they usually incorporate about 1%, so we're in line with where most districts are regarding that. I'm not gonna, Jim explained a lot about what we've done when creating the budget. When I first got here, how the budget was delivered previously was that they had a top-down approach, like here's what you have and that's what you get to spend. When I came along the first year, I looked at what we actually expended and did a needs-based budget, like, okay, this is what we expended the last 2 years and this is what we're gonna budget for. And then we switched gears, my second year here, and went to each of the department heads and the principals and said, okay, what do you need? And we're starting zero-based, tell us what you need and we'll go from there. And we do spend, the first year we didn't spend a lot of time with them, the last 2 years we spend a lot of time with each of the principals and department heads going through them. And as Jim said, take the time to go through and figure out, lots of times you're not getting everything you asked for and trying to figure out like what is actually gonna move the district forward as far as what the strategic plan is putting forth. So our budget is based on, for you guys, first of all, is where your enrollment is. You can see that your enrollment went down by 7 students. Which is only 0.44%, but it did go down a little bit. And then the second piece is what the state says that your minimum local contribution is. And this is where the state is calculating what your affordability is to pay. And they have an assumption that you're going up 5.25%. So you can always look at that minimum local contribution and know you're only going up from there. That's our starting point. So that's where you're at this year. Then line by line or appropriation by appropriation, done basically what I've done in the past, so I don't wanna sound like too much like a broken record, but going down from the top, our salaries and stipends, I look at every individual person that's working there, that's in bargaining unit agreements, adjust them to their next step. If there's an already allocated cost of living adjustment, that of course on that next salary scale. This year we only have 3 bargaining units that had a 2% cost of living adjustment, but when then they're adjusted by steps, the average increase is a little bit over 4% for every, like if I look at the whole unit. This year, if you're looking at the line by line, I know we have some people who do look at that line by line. I have a huge salary reserve number. That's because we have the WREA, which is our biggest bargaining unit, that has not negotiated yet, so I have a big question mark on what their salary reserve or what their cost of living adjustment is gonna be. We also have our nurses, our clerical unit, our custodial unit. And then all the principals, the individual contracts, and any unrepresented people are still like a question mark. We kind of base where the teachers end up negotiating what everyone's gonna get as a cost of living adjustment. We also have in that salary reserve so that I'm getting a complete salary number there. Any lane changes, that's when teachers in WREA, they get a higher degree, they move to a different lane, so there's a significant impact there. Longevity adjustments, a lot of the bargaining units, they move, if they work a certain number of years. Then we have people who retire, we have some retirement incentives like sick buyback. And then any open positions and the positions that we plan to add, net of any positions we hope to eliminate. So that's all in that. It's a very big number this year. I know some people pointed out. But what I do, as soon as those things end up getting where they need to be, I'll put them to the appropriate places. So in the end of the year, that salary reserve is zero. Like it goes to where it belongs. So it's accounted for in the appropriate place. So we're looking at, with the budget increase that we have approved by the school committee, a 5.67% increase there. Benefits and insurance, that 10.47 increase. We are seeing our health insurance, the plan that we have is a 9.1% increase. As it stands, hopefully we're gonna see something different. And then our Medicare plans average out to a 15.9% increase. That increase includes our Medicare portion of the change in salaries and stipends. We have to pay Medicare in addition to that. And then also our Worcester County retirement, which that is 9.78% increase, provided we pay on July 1. Then our instructional support line is going up 20.2%. This is with the adoption of all of our new high quality instruction materials and across all of our subject areas. It includes that. All of our supplies and materials that are used in the classroom, our technology and computer leases, and copier leases. We're actually this year trying to get out of our lease agreements or financing our Chromebooks. We're planning on buying our Chromebooks outright to ultimately we'll save. It's gonna cost a little more this year, but the next 2 years we won't have to renew leases, and then we will stop paying finance charges. So in the long run, it's a little hit this year, but a big savings or a decent savings in the next couple of years. And then this is also includes contracted services for student support and professional development costs. Then the next line, the operations and maintenance, we're looking at a 9.64% increase. I know a lot of you came to the February 24th meeting with the Business and Finance Subcommittee and the School Committee meeting. At that point, I did not include an increase in oil, but given what's going on in our country, I ended up adding a little bit to cover heating oil and an anticipated increase in electricity. But the biggest increase in this line is we're making some repairs to the high school, that auto shop floor that we weren't able to do last year because the bid ended up being more than double what we expected. We put some money in E&D to cover what we had planned to use last year, but we're doing that project to get that done. And then we're also doing the bidirectional amplifiers that we're asking most of the towns to do at each of their schools to have safety and communication within the building. And then at the ECC in the central office, we have a stair lift that hasn't been working since we were there that needs to be replaced. It's for accessibility to get the only way down the stairs is through a stair lift, like I don't know how to explain it, but and then we are gonna add some door and security cameras. There's no security at that building. And then we need to do some parking lot and driveway improvements to help the traffic flow. It's pretty crazy when the people are trying to drop off and pick up. We did make a change this year that they were taking in the special needs students in the front and they'd have to go upstairs. So we're trying to change that traffic pattern so that there's some safety there. So those are the major increases that are going on there. Then that pupil service line, the next line reflects expenses for athletics, health services, and student activities. we were misappropriating some of that stuff, so you're seeing an increase there. Not a huge increase as far as dollars are concerned. But the bulk of it is because we were putting like our graduations and expenses in that area in the instructional support line. It really belongs in the people services line. So just the graduation alone for the high school to rent the DCU is like 40 grand. So there's some other additional like transportation expenses that are student activity related that we do pay out of there. So there's not really an increase in pupil services from last year. It's just putting things where they belong. And then the special ed tuitions, you see a huge decrease. Jim talked about this a little. Our special ed tuitions are actually almost $8 million, I think $7.89 million. We, last year it was like nine and a half million, something like that when I came to, in the end. But we are able to use an extra, I'm using 5.85 million, I think, in circuit breaker, whereas in previous years, because our circuit breaker was so low, I only used like 4.4, 4.25 to actually build ourselves a situation where we're using circuit breaker the correct way. So if some astronomical out-of-district placement did come into play, we would have the money here. Like we were down to a point of one placement could have put us into like, well, we don't have that. So we're in a better place with that. And then we're using 1.1 million from our the IDEA grant that we get. Usually we've used a little bit more in IDEA. We used 1.5, but we're gonna switch how we're using that grant a little bit to provide some different services. So really all you're seeing in that line, that 594,000 is our tuitions to collaboratives. That is going in that line. And then we get charged a little special ed increment for any kids who choice out. So that's in that line too, but I think it's really like maybe $13,000 or $15,000. It's not much, but that's mostly tuition to collaboratives that we plan on. So we did have that drop was because we actually had several students age out this year. So it's not, that it's we're finally catching our breath on those special ed tuitions. The other operating cost, someone was talking about what these are, is our recent tuition charges that come through on our cherry sheet for kids who school choice out and our kids who charter school out. So you can see that $1.7 million, it was what we're spending for kids choicing out and chartering out. So I believe that we definitely spend more in charter, but I think we're paying almost, I'd have to look at the numbers. It's like maybe 900 in charter and 800 in school choice. So that's how many kids are. So I think it was you who said there's an imbalance there. Yeah. So, I mean, we do get those kids that are chartering and choicing out. Those are included, those are students who we're financially responsible for, so they are included in our foundation budget. And I probably should have said that on your slide where I was showing you what your enrollment was. That enrollment is the kids that live in our towns and go to our schools. So that's the enrollment that of the actual kids in our town. So we're not including in those numbers where you're paying for the other pieces, you're not paying for the kids who are choicing in. Okay, like on those pieces. So just so you were aware of that. Then the transportation, our regular ed transportation, we're in the third year of it'll be the third year of our contract with AA Transportation. It was a 5.5% increase for our regular transportation. Our special ed transportation is third year of the contract, 7.9%. And then the out of district transportation, I dropped a little. But the in-district special ed transportation, just know we only pay for what we use, even though I might have done a 7.9% increase based on what the contract reads. That always goes by what the actual needs are for those transportation services at that time. So that can be a little less, could be a little more, it's a little flexible in there. And then our debt service, we're down a little bit. I think one of our bonds will be paid off next year. that I feel like it's a 260,000 one, but I could be wrong, please don't quote me on that. And then all of our debt will be paid, I think, in 2029, so we only have a few more years, we don't have a lot sitting there.
If I may,
Sure.
sorry. I was on the Mars call last night for the Massachusetts Association of Regional Schools, and some of their caution, and it was mostly on chapter 70 and hold harmless, but a lot of their cautionary tales were really the oil and electricity piece, and even just what happened last night after that call. I want to be mindful that the district is super mindful of that piece and looking towards E&D or other funding sources, because I think for the town as well, it's one of the most volatile pieces. The other point I wanted to note was, in addition to that advocacy for chapter 70, they've also been looking at transportation and the single bids in the large districts especially. And so that's a piece that's on the state side, as far as just trying to figure out ways that becomes more competitive going forward. It's obviously not going to be a fix for this year or next year when we go out, but and I know Worcester recently brought in their transportation into house. There's obviously a huge upfront expense on that, but what's the long-term cost savings and potential grant funding opportunities if the district wanted to move that way? So I just wanted to put those two, I know it's on your radar, but they really were harping on the oil and electricity piece last night.
So with that being said, so this budget that's been approved is the 4.44%. On the next slide, or if you flip, it's not on the same slide, if you flip your page. So Jim talked a little bit about this agreement with the PEC, that they have agreed to move to an insurance program. It's called a PFA, or a participating funding arrangement. And instead of we have right now, the plans that they have in place that we are been providing to our employees are either no deductible or $250 deductible. So they're extremely and very low co-pays. They're extremely expensive plans. Our experience with our insurance has been very good, where we're at like 78 to 80%, meaning what we pay in claims is 78 to 80% of what we're paying in premium. However, we're just sending all that premium to Blue Cross Blue Shield. So we have found an arrangement that was presented to the PAC, where we're going to high deductible health plans, and instead of, so those premiums are coming down by millions of dollars. And what we're doing, building into the premium, is we're paying the first $3,000. It's a $4,000. I'm just going to go individual plan, not to get too deep into the weeds, but say an individual plan where they'll get a debit card where they'll pay the first $3,000 or $3,500 of that deductible. So we're only paying for what we're using. So that is dropping our premiums a great deal. So what we're doing is we increase the salary and stipends a little bit, just to have a little bit of flexibility when we're bargaining with some of these units. We add a little there to have a little flexibility. And then our benefits and insurance, you can see, is going down to 1.83% increase instead of a 10.47% increase. And then in the operations and maintenance, I upped that based on what is happening with the oil. Luckily, with our transportation contracts, those are contracts, they're gonna have to absorb the cost of fuel should that go awry. That's not gonna fall on us. Ultimately, it could when we're going to bargain and get new contracts, but we're safe on that area. So I did do that.
It would be about 25% more than she originally budgeted.
Yeah, so that's where we're seeing the changes. So you can see that's a little over 3%, a 3.09% increase in our budget if we can move over the finish line with this this PFA. So and then just going on to the revenue, chapter 70, you already know this, we're getting an extra $75 per pupil, which is a 1.31% increase. The chapter 71 transportation, you see it going down. It goes back to a couple years ago when I first got here for FY24. We did not have a end of year report done, and so our cherry sheet was reflecting a very small amount for a reimbursement because they didn't have what our transportation expenses were. And then I'm pretty sure it was the town of Holden that was looking at Cherry Sheet changed after I had submitted the end of year report, but I never changed changed what was given to the towns because I was like, I don't know how this is all gonna work out. And you are forced to use what the difference between what you budgeted for and what was on that cherry sheet or what you actually got in reimbursement, you're forced the following year to use it. So last year in FY '25, I had $1.1 million in transportation reimbursement that I had to use toward transportation. Therefore, bringing down what our transportation costs were last year. So they're not gonna give me reimbursement on reimbursement. So that brought our costs down. So that's why you're seeing that slight decrease. I was kind of happy that it wasn't as much as I thought it could have been. So it, it worked out all right. We do have a little, I think I have a couple $100,000 from the FY '25 and what we actually got that I have to use this year, but not to that degree. So you'll see that kind of flatten out as we go along. But it's not because the state is giving us less, it's because the state already gave it to us and I had to use it, so. And then our charter tuition aid went down a little bit, again, right off the cherry sheet, that's all state aid that comes our way. And then our local revenues, Medicaid, I left stable in what we've gotten in reimbursements last year. I left interest stable. I will tell you, I know that we're gonna get more than $400,000 in interest this year. I think we've already gotten that with only 7 out of the 12 months of the year. But I'm afraid of where interest rates might be, so I don't wanna I up that, but I don't wanna overestimate revenue. And then miscellaneous revenue, again, that's the money that we do get back for transportation for kids that belong to other districts, special ed kids out of district. And then E&D, we, as Jim said earlier, we increased that to $1 million instead of $500,000, just making sure we keep a safe enough reserve. If anything ever happens, the last thing we wanna do is have to go back to the towns and go, we didn't ask enough money from you guys, so we wanna keep a proper E&D available to us in case of emergency, but at the same time, make sure we're giving it back to you, when we can. So here are your actual assessments. So the first assessment that you're seeing there is on the approved budget, is right now at 7.5% increase. And then the next slide is if we do get through the PFA, then we're looking at about a 5%, 5.07% increase, which is a huge difference for you guys. So, but just remember, we have some legal stuff to get through and school committee has to approve it, but we just wanted to give you the heads up. Cause I know I already had a town looking for the assessment letters and I'm waiting on sending the actual assessment letters to the town, so you know what will actually be heading into your budget. I think I have 30 days to get them to you from when the school committee approves, so.
When the PEC might be
Yeah,
approved?
We're working with
hopeful it's-
legal.
Yeah, as soon as possible, and so we had sent.
Are we talking 4 weeks?
No,
Six
no,
weeks?
we're not waiting
We're
for
hoping to have an
weeks.
answer next week.
Thank you, that's the thing, as soon as possible, I get it, is that 4 weeks, 6
No,
weeks,
no.
when it becomes
4
with
days
the
would be more
lawyers?
ideal.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Jim
we
would
got
have
it at
liked
2
it.
Yeah, we got it at 2 PM yesterday and they got it at 2:30 yesterday.
No, that's fine, it's just lawyers tend to,
Yeah,
Wasn't yesterday.
yeah, the day before,
Yep.
but, we did, like I said, Jim said we met with the school committee so that we at least were able to share a little, like, some idea of where exactly you might be at, and it's huge for,
Huge for everybody.
Yeah.
I'm assuming with that, the premiums are coming down for both the school and the,
Yeah,
and the.
they're
users.
getting about a 7% savings.
Yeah.
And they're
so it
actually
really is
getting
a-
a little bit more than that.
And so it's really a good deal for the employees as well, but I think for us, they're working with us and we
Yep.
appreciate it.
That's nice.
And so it's traditionally been a very conservative group and they've been very nervous of any changes. And so we are very appreciative that they've considered this and we've talked to them about this and they know that our strategy would be make sure we have protection around the oil, but otherwise, really, the bulk of this money is going straight to the towns, or at least that's our recommendation to the school committee, and I think based on school committee's response on Tuesday, I think they were largely in favor of that approach.
If I may, I have a question, and this is maybe a clarification for the the new insurance agreement, potential new insurance agreement. I think I was on the call the other night with the school committee call. And if I understood correctly, it's a 1-year essentially trial. I mean, there's no guarantee, there's the hope that this is a sustainable moving forward. But I guess I'm concerned, we're concerned, looking at the budget and multi-year, that it's possible that this is not currently a multi-year agreement. Is that correct? And
Just by the way the PEC works,
yeah,
it has to be renewed every year.
okay.
What I would share is, and I think this is what we shared with the unions, it's not sustainable that we continued using the programs that we were using, and it didn't make any financial sense. And so I think they know that. I think they have some apprehension because it is new. I think Michelle and I said this on the call the other night, we're gonna do everything in our power to make this successful.
Yeah.
And we feel like financially it's very successful. So it's really only a question of making sure people are educated, and if there's an issue, resolving it really quickly. But I think even the teachers and the other union members understand, if this money is not, if it's put towards insurance, then it has to come out of something else. You know, we have finite budgets, and we know we're pushing it every year in terms of what we're asking for and what the towns can afford. And it would be disastrous to have a $2 million increase again next year. Like, that can't happen. I think the important thing, and this kind of moves into this next slide, it's important to know that this is really a one-time savings. We're never gonna have a $2 million savings on insurance again. I mean, I think at this point, and I didn't mention it earlier, I just wanna thank Michelle so much for her hard work, Bill Viendo, who's our HR director, and then also the unions for taking a risk. But we kind of have reached the point where I don't think we have any more tricks to pull out in terms of our budget, and I think we want to be transparent about that. We're amazed if we can get down to 3.09%, and it's approved by school committee. But it really happened by, you know, we're always talking about the perfect storms. I'm phrasing this as the perfect sunset, and it's the perfect sunset because 3 things happened in this budget that just aren't normal. We still were funded terribly by the state. You know, I think when I look back on the page when Michelle was sharing the revenues, our increase by the state this year is less than 0.5%. Okay, but 3 things that we had some control over happened this year. One of them was this huge reduction in special education tuitions. And again, I think it's important to say it's not because we've been denying kids placements, it's because they've aged out. But it's also why in this budget you see us concentrating so much on special education, because we want to buffer or build up the services we're providing in district, so we can hopefully have as many kids in district as we can. But be assured, you know, if a child needs an out-of-district placement, we're gonna give it to them. But that decrease, obviously 80-something%, it's not gonna happen again. We were very high, and Michelle was reminding me of this the other day, even though we're the 25th largest district, our circuit breaker reimbursements were like around 10. And so we did have a lot of kids out of district. And so this is maybe approached more towards a normalization of those placements, you know, reflecting the size of our district. But as always, we can't predict, you know, basically a child needs the placement, they get the placement. And those kids deserve it, and yes, they're expensive, but that's what they need. And so that's one thing I'm not sure is gonna happen moving forward. We've got like kind of a 2-year honeymoon on circuit breaker, okay? And so we finally reached the point where we're able to give you what we know is in the bank, and so we're able to give you that full amount. But that kind of is only gonna happen for a 2-year period. So we have a great sweet spot where we got reimbursed for a higher number of kids in placement, and now we have fewer kids in placement. So we've got this, you know, I don't know what you call it, the delta or whatever is great. You know, we're seeing really nice savings there. And it will happen again next year, where circuit breaker's even more. I think it's like, what, 6.2 or something like
6.3 million.
6.3 million. So we'll see it again next year, we'll see an uptick. But after that, it's gonna be based on fewer kids in placements, and so that number's gonna come down again. And so it's important that folks know that as well. And then lastly, I think the health insurance, you know, we haven't talked about. It's kind of like what we did in terms of the financing for the Chromebooks. We'll see that benefit every year eventually. But the amount of savings isn't gonna be what this original savings was. And so we probably see if we're able to continue on this plan and we really are focusing on making this work, if we can get the PEC agreement over the line. But the savings at that point will probably be $200,000 a year because the percentage increase will be applied to $2 million less. But effectively next year, like all the towns and most school districts, our increase in insurance is gonna be between 8 and 12%. That's just what it is, regardless. The good thing is it's based on a lower number, but that's what it's gonna go up to. And I share that because, although we're thrilled to get to this number, I'm not sure that that's gonna happen until the state fixes the funding formula. We had a couple meetings last year in November and December, I believe. And at that time, I was amazed the more I learn about it, the more I'm amazed at how accurate Michelle was in trying to forecast. And it's very hard to forecast because there's so many unknowns, out of district placements and other things that you really just can't, fuel costs that you really can't always plan for. But at that time, she said, based on the funding from the state, right, and especially if we remain in hold harmless, which so many districts are at this point, our increase in the budget, if we just kept level services, is most likely gonna be between 4.5% and 5.5%. Like, we had done pretty well, to be honest with you, to even get to the 4.4. And not that I'm asking people to do cartwheels because we came in at 4.4. I know it's still extraordinarily high, and I look at the town assessment, and whether it's 7.5 or in the 5s, it's a lot. And I think I just want to acknowledge that, but I also want to make sure if we come back next year, we always do the best we can. And in some years, we've had pretty high assessments or budget increases, and this year, we're really hoping it's gonna end up around that 3 level. And I just would say to you is, we take the same approach every year. We try to build what the kids need and try to make the district move forward. And then we honestly do try to sharpen our pens and make whatever, cuts we can make where we need to, and make sure we don't have a lot of waste. And, try to be responsible and offer you E&D, and in some cases offer you additional Chapter 70 or make the recommendation to school committee who ultimately authorizes that. And we're just gonna try to take that approach continuously. And some years it stinks, and we understand, like, there are gonna be some years that maybe our budgets aren't gonna pass. And please know, we know, it's the voters who are gonna decide whether or not that actually happens. But I think as much as we try to support the budget when the numbers end up being high, we also, when we know we can get to a lower number, or we have good fortune that comes upon the district, we're gonna do our very best to recommend to the school committee, and they've been very supportive of trying to share that with the towns. And so I think that's just the one thing we're trying to accomplish here, and we're really hoping that we'll ultimately be able to do.
And I appreciate that. I think my comment was more for everybody in the room here, just as we look towards override numbers and everything, and I think you're aware that Rutland is looking towards a multi-year override also, that we wanna be cognizant that that this is a very fortunate year, if assuming that the pending PEC agreement goes through, that's not likely sustainable.
You and I are saying the exact same thing.
So
And that's why I was kind of describing it as like, it's a sunset, because I'm not sure it's gonna happen again.
Yeah.
And what I'm hoping, and it's just like, I know this is totally corny and they make fun of me when they do it, but I'm hoping for the perfect sunrise, which is when they fix the funding formula and we don't all have to go through this every year, right? Because that's the biggest problem. The biggest problem is that the state funding stinks right now, and it's a really broken system, and we're getting hammered by it. And so.
And as an aside, on the Mars call last night, one of the big things that they kept harping on is how much advocacy they need from the towns, and and schools are doing a really, really good job with advocacy, but the towns are not. And the towns, people, elected officials, FinComs, everybody, they need town advocacy also. So I just wanted to put that out.
No, thank you.
This room.
Thank you. And you've been fortunate, and honestly, that's why I start every time thanking the towns, because and I get it, and I heard it last night in Holden. I know people are frustrated. And I'm a resident of one of our 5 towns too, and nobody wants overrides or other things like that, and we are very appreciative. But I'm frustrated as a person who works in a school district, but I think the towns, we really should be. People should be very frustrated. I mean, this is not fair. It really isn't. And so we kind of went over this before, we did want to let you know, we are doing more revenues this year towards you with the circuit breaker, with the E&D. We did not choose to put money into the capital stabilization account. We do thank the towns because you approved us to have that. But what we decided and recommended the school committee and school committee approved was we thought it was more important to give E&D back to the towns than to put it into the capital stabilization account, so we did not make that recommendations. And school committee agreed, and they voted for that. We are hopeful that we're gonna have some money at the end of the year to address some of our capital needs. Primary concern for me honestly is our early childhood center. Those are your youngest kids. And like, that's why we're focusing on the parking lot this year. It really is dangerous there, at the end of the day. And again, they'll be the only school that doesn't have really security systems. Davis Hill is scheduled to have that done in Holden this year, but other than that, the only school that doesn't have it is early childhood. And a lot of times what we don't think about is that's the age where you may have custody issues or other things that are happening, and it is really important to have a security system that works in those schools. I want to thank all of you in the town of Rutland for your support of the security systems at all of our schools. Glenwood, Naquag and Central Tree all benefited from those systems. Also, Glenwood, the second floor playground, a Newport floor was put in there to make it safe for the kids and usable. It wasn't usable before, so I just want to acknowledge that work and thank people for that. We were also able, through the last budget, we put in work. If you haven't been up to the high school, if you look at the high school entrance, there was poured concrete that was put down. It was in really bad shape and it was not accessible. And so you real trip hazard and impossible if you had mobility issues, and so that was fixed this last year due to the budget, and so thank you for that support. And then we were also able to get a playground structure at the ECC, and it's gonna be put in this spring, and should hopefully make that experience better for those kids, so thank you. The one project, and we actually presented, I'm gonna mess up the name, Natalie, the capital improvement committee, or we
CIPC.
Thank you very much. We're very kind, and they listened to us make a presentation, a request for a bi-directional amplifier at Glenwood School. And they're considering that. I know they actually invited police and fire to talk to them about that. The reason why that was the projects that were presented by a school committee is we meet with our chiefs on a monthly basis, both fire and police, and the recommendation of that group, we talked to them about things that would help make our schools more safe, and their recommendation is that we consider these systems. They are required in all new school buildings, but due to the age of most of our schools, the only place in the district that had one is Mount View School. Some schools don't need one, and we had that analysis, and we've shared that with people in the town. But our recommendation was that type of system be considered in Glenwood, whether it happens this year or in the future. We thought that was an important recommendation to make. We are going to be installing, if this budget passes, we will be installing one of those systems at the high school, where it's such a large school. It's really important that you have that type of system.
What does it do?
Essentially what it does, it allows your emergency personnel, whether it be police, fire, EMTs, they can communicate building wide. And so a lot of these structures, just the way they are built, it's hard to have consistent communication. And so in the event of emergency, you ensure that people can talk no matter where they are on the campus. You know, they move to a common channel and you're good to go. And really with Glenwood, we know its location, tough self-service, other things, we're actually trying to work on that as well. It's important, you know, beautiful school and beautiful place, but you also wanna make sure it's as safe as possible.
How much would that be?
It's about $130,000, I wanna say off the top of my head. We provided quotes and to folks.
When did are we operational with to the police and fire department if there was an incident yet within our town? When's that gonna happen?
So I couldn't speak specifically about the town of Rutland in terms of what it's like in all of your buildings. I know most of the chiefs said that they're looking at that across all of their communities.
We can't access any of the security systems in Rutland.
I'll be honest with you, that one I'm not directly involved in. We had an update, I thought, at the at one of the meetings.
Yeah, I think I remember Shannon had said that they were working on getting that integrated together so that they can work through the technical issues. Yeah.
And I don't want, we've been hearing about it for a little bit.
Yep.
And we paid a lot of money 2 years ago. Could someone give us a hard date when you guys school committee or somebody, let me know when it's gonna work.
It's not, I'm gonna tell you right now, it's not a school issue. It's a town issue, to be
Well, they
honest.
blame you.
The meeting I was at, they acknowledged at this point, it's a town
They've
issue.
never acknowledged it in one of these meetings.
Okay, I'll find out for you, but I'm almost positive at this point, you're not waiting for anything from the schools. I think we're good on our end. I'll check for you, and if I'm wrong, I will show up the next week and apologize. But I think we're in a good spot in terms of what
We
you.
also, our town administrator will be on it too, she'll find out.
No, she's great.
Yeah, we're
She's
good.
great, and I didn't say this, and my hope moving forward with Rutland, because you had mentioned this, when we got together a couple months ago. One of our focuses is gonna be looking at, what's the long-term plan, what does the town wanna do about Naquag and other schools, and making long-term plans in terms of our physical plans.
We're just wondering where, what you guys think, so we can start making plans.
100%, and I think my job is to support the town with where they wanna go, and so what I'm gonna try to do is give you the best information we have. And one of our goals we talked about in our, we have a safety and security subcommittee with school committee. And one of the things we talked about in our last meeting is, perhaps making that one of our goals moving forward is to make sure we're meeting with the towns, looking at projected growth, and then talking long-term strategy about what the towns may wanna do for the facilities. Like, do they want to look at a school like Naquag, and is it a question of you wanna refurbish that school and, look at new windows and roofs and boilers and things? Or at some point, do you want a new building? And just making sure that we're a partner in that, because I think the important part from the school perspective is we're the ones who can give the towns access to the Mass Building Authority, and that gives you a really much better rate if you're gonna finance any of those projects, and whether it's an accelerated repair program or deciding that you want a different school.
I'm pretty sure that one of your predecessors went down this path already. And I'm not putting this on you because there was a transition. But it got mentioned a few years ago, they had a study committee to look at all the buildings and where we were and all that. One of the budgets at the time was to fund some of that stuff and to help do that. I don't know where that all ended up, but it went.
We have 10 years, we have 10-year projections for population in all the towns. We have a town, we're in the second year of what they call the Town Growth and Facilities Task Force, and maybe the third year actually, and they're in phase 2 right now. And we actually have had some assessments of all of the school buildings, and we will be sharing those with the towns. And they basically went out and looked at what's the capacity, what are the age ranges that are best served by the building, and so we do have that information that it would be good timing if we decide to, try to partner up next year. And I think what I would want people to know, we were really happy to come and talk to you earlier this year. Like, it was nice to get the invite and come and talk to you in the fall. And I think what I would want people to know is we don't have to just show up in the spring and, ask for money. I think for us, ideally where we're gonna be is like we start, presenting in the fall, or we say, hey, like, where the school building's at, let's talk about like what's the long range plan, when we might have, a project to look at. Say if the decision is you want to do repairs at Naquag, when are we gonna talk about maybe moving forward and getting in the accelerated repair program where they can get up to 80%, I think, back for every dollar from the state. And like look at maybe getting a new roof or windows or things like that and start to schedule all of those things out. I think we'd be all for that. And I think it makes sense, and I think we're hopefully at the point where organizationally, we feel better about where we are financially and can start to partner with the towns about some of that long range planning and support the towns. Cause ultimately, they are your decisions, but we wanna give you as much information as we can, so you guys make the decision that you feel is best for the town.
It's time probably, but we gotta get there.
Yes, and you can, at the Mass Building Authority, you can only have one project going at a time, so it's like looking at those buildings and those, like the accelerated repair program will be like a 4 or 5 year time frame, but a building project would be like reconstruction or and it would be 8 to 10 years. So it's figuring out where you need to be, and then as a town, I'm pretty certain even what the district has to do the statement of interest to get that money, but the town has to have the town on board with that before that statement of interest will even move forward.
Cause it's a reimbursement program.
Yeah, so like they're not gonna start that project or approve a project unless they know the town has already voted to take on that debt. So,
Would you do us a favor and send us the steps as you would see them on something like this as it proceeds, so that we can understand where we best assert ourselves and talk about the process?
Absolutely.
And the other thing that I would like to just ask quickly here is, I want to emphasize Leah's point from earlier. Our transportation contract runs out, not next year, but year after that, I think. Is that right? So
next year is our final year, and we have a 2-year, 5.5% increase, an extension of 2 years. Should that look like a good deal? We
Okay,
don't know what
that's-
that's gonna look like at that time.
So the only way that we'll achieve any kind of bargaining power at the size district that we're at is that we have to be prepared with the, I don't know if you want to call it the atomic option, but going and owning our own transportation, which I think, you know, I would advocate tirelessly for, but that's just me. So the only way we're going to be able to have any bargaining power is have that plan right in our back pocket, ready to go. Because otherwise, you know, it's not going to be a fruitful negotiation.
Yeah, I mean, I think to your point, we only had really one bid last time. So, I think you're right.
So I have 2 questions, just a really quick one, but I want, just what you just said about busing was my other question I had. Back on the, I didn't ask it then, on the student enrollment, the population of all the 5 towns that you show at 6508, is that correct? That's correct, right?
Yep.
Okay, so how does the school choice, does that include the school choice? Okay, so where are those, do you have those numbers and
How many school choice, we had
Yeah.
25 school choice students this past,
that came in?
Yep.
And how many of the students, well, they wouldn't be in these numbers, right?
Yeah,
School,
yeah.
the school
No,
choice went out?
Yeah, so they're not included in those numbers, because those are actually students who are residing in district.
Right,
They're in a different number which we can get you,
okay,
but they're not included in those numbers. Those numbers are the ones that are actually used to determine share of the budget.
okay. So back, again, we asked a question, and Michelle was explaining to us about the reimbursement stuff for busing and, you know, with the half-mile radius and the beyond that and the extra, so we went through all those weeds. But you were gonna get us some more information on exactly, I guess what I was confused on, I don't know, but I think the number of buses you had to have were for seats of that over the half mile, was it half mile or
A mile
mile?
and a
Whatever,
half.
mile and a half, okay, so that one. But then when it came to the reimbursement, you had to count up the kids that actually used it, and that was the reimbursement.
You're thinking a little backwards.
No, probably, that's why I'm
yeah.
asking.
So we get reimbursed for students who are transported 1.5 miles or more.
Correct.
Okay, there are students that sit on those buses that are less than 1.5 miles transportation.
Well,
So,
that- Yeah,
That's it, she was just saying that.
yeah,
So, not all the kids who actually ride the bus, we get reimbursed.
correct, but it wasn't clear then, you were gonna look further into it about how the final number was calculated for the reimbursement.
that's actually on our end of year report, we allocated out, so I'll actually take an allocation of our total expenses and just say, okay, if I have, 4,000 students who are above 1.5 miles and 1,000 that are below 1.5 miles, you just 80% of our total costs will be reimbursable and 20% wouldn't be reimbursable. Though I'm making up those numbers, but
Okay.
it's actually, I'd have to look at our end of year report if you wanted to have actual numbers.
So, yeah, so could we just get a copy of that
Sure.
when you can? Okay,
Sure.
that was from before.
So I guess I would, not knowing the numbers that are within the 1.5 miles of all the towns then, I'm wondering with the new contract for the transportation, if we learned what that number was, rather than all of the students, so you separate out the 1.5 mile students, would that change what our needs and requirements are for the number of buses and the routes and all of that. Is it a place to make a cost savings?
So say that again. Sorry.
She's wondering is like, if we're not legally required to transport students within that mile and a half, if we make the choice not to deliver that service, would that make a difference in terms of the number of buses and other things that we have and result in cost savings?
Well, wouldn't a mile and a half students not be included in the first place for the busing costs?
And so typically I don't know, it's a good question in terms of when we go out to bid, how they make the determination in terms of the number of buses that we need. At times, we have conversations with the bus company, and whether or not, I think at this point, we still have one extra bus we could access, don't we, by the contract?
Yeah, we, like, I think we're contracted for 50 buses, we only put 49 out there. Some of what I would say about the under the mile and a half, while that seems like a really great idea, there's some situations that it's really not safe for kids to not be hopping on a bus, like for them to walk or whatever. And then you're talking about those additional parents bringing them, dropping them off and all that. It's not an easy thing to just have happen. Could there possibly be some savings in buses? I'm not a transportation supervisor. I know in my previous district, and I don't like, I'd have to ask the girl that works with our transportation company. Usually you try to make the effort if there's space on the bus. So I'm not 100% certain
I hear that.
that getting, because we need a certain number of routes. It's especially hard in a regional school district. You're not supposed to have kids on buses for more than 45 minutes. That's a long time in each direction. Think about, people don't want a 45-minute commute. So they try to maintain that. So even when they're doing those extra stops, they have to still keep that in that equation. It's not just as simple as one would think. I can assure you of that. And I appreciate that that idea for cost savings, but I don't know that it would yield us so many fewer buses that it would be worth the risk of safety. It would be worth the risk of you know, having parents who are paying all this money to be screaming at you like, what's going on here?
To put it into context, Carol, for Rutland, you'd be talking about 6-year-olds in like Brunel Highland, like Brunel Farms, walking to Naquag. Like that's within that mile and a half.
Or adding the parents
Well,
in
you
the
know,
cars.
We were
trying to
changing the
drop
bus
them.
routes, like that's what we would be cutting out, like that's insane.
I understand all of it. I guess I just approach some things with where could we potentially find some cost savings in an ever-increasing municipality budget. And
So,
That's
so
not it.
just, you know, and then I think the frustrating part too is that, you know, we pay all this money and the parents are still driving their kids. So I really wonder how many children are really on these buses.
They're
You know,
packed.
They're full.
no, they're not, because
They are.
Not
My
every
kids are
single
not
one.
everywhere,
Not
not anywhere
everyone,
near
but we
mine.
get emails that
Right.
you can't put your kid on another bus because they're full. So there are some,
know where
not
those
all, that
are,
are
but-
at capacity.
Depends where you're seeing them.
Yeah, I
They
didn't
could
see
have
that.
just dropped off, they could have just picked up. But we have to, like, in order to get our reimbursement, we have to have 75% or more capacity. So we're
so
Total that, because I mean,
No,
my granddaughter rode a bus for 2 years and she had no more than 10 kids on that bus from my side of town all the way up to Central Tree. So that's my experience.
All right.
if I could add for just a second here, I think what is bothersome to me is the straight up multiplier by the kids that are within mile and a half radius to those that are outside a mile and a half radius. Really, the reimbursement should only change if those kids that are within a mile and a half radius actually cause us to have more buses, because you can't tell me that the additional stop when you're a half mile away from the school is going to cost more from a transportation standpoint. Going back to Dr. Riley's previous plain explanation, I think that would make sense. And so that's where I'm actually a little bit more perturbed about the way that this thing is calculated. And kids being on buses or not being on buses, I think sometimes you have to have an inefficient bus route just because you have an efficient one next door. Right?
There are already
So
kids that are on the
part-
bus for an hour in the morning or more.
That's
We're
correct.
just gonna
So
say the same thing.
There's
the
90
way
miles
it's
worth of
calculated-
roads, yeah, so.
Airplane and an
The
allergy.
way it's calculated
my
is where
other question is,
where the problem is.
And
have
we
to
are
have-
lucky to get that reimbursement. Like, regional school districts are the only ones who are getting that reimbursement because of the size of the districts. Your regular municipalities are not getting any reambrsement
But
whatsoever.
it's a reimbursement of a percentage of the 100%, so it's not, and we talked about this last time, when we did meet in November, is that misnomer is that it's 100% transport. That the state says that they're gonna reimburse 100% of district transportation, but it's 100% really of a percentage of that 100%, and it's not even 100% of that, so I think is another thing that needs to be fixed.
So is it a
Statewide.
correct statement to say then you have to provide seats for those outside the 1.5 miles and pay for those seats? And the people that are driving their kids to school that may be in that group, we're paying the money for an empty seat, basically. Is a correct statement?
Yeah, we have to have the capacity.
No, I understand that.
No, and what I'm saying is you're right, because that's what our contract is based on.
No, I understand.
And so,
Right.
I'm agreeing with you,
Yep,
yes,
yep,
you're right.
yep. Okay.
That's
I know
exactly
at some point the district also charged bus fees for the kids who are under 1.5 miles. That is like.
That will not go over well.
right. I was gonna say, now who are you trying to get
Nope.
fired?
No, I'm
Could
not,
you-
I am not suggesting that, because that just,
Is that known as the crow flies or is that like roads?
what's that?
That 1.5 miles?
It's roads.
I thought so. Okay.
Yeah.
I think the other mindful thing is we have gotten a lot of feedback for our walkers to Central Tree, that there's no sidewalks up from Rutland Heights Way. And so I think there's a lot of roads in Rutland as well as other communities that if we were really going to strongly enforce 1.5 miles,
We have to make
that
it safe.
there's going to need to be significant road updates to ensure to the safety point. But we currently are experiencing a lot of feedback and upset family members for their middle schoolers walking, and that's not elementary. And so I think that that's another, it might be cost savings on the transportation side from school budget, but there's going to be huge investments on the town side and then the maintenance and upkeep of all of that also. So I think it's a,
And it's issues, I'll be honest with you, it's issues at multiple schools and multiple towns.
yeah,
And
not.
and unfortunately, just by the location of some of our schools and the age levels that they serve and the lack of sidewalks in many of the communities, it makes it a safety consideration, 100% agree.
And we are getting more transportation reimbursement. The circuit breaker just added in, I think this is maybe the 3rd year, but the special ed transportation was not being reimbursed at all. So if we have a student that is hitting that circuit breaker threshold, we're now getting, and that's where we got the extra money that came the earmark that we got. Because they were supposed to be at 75%, but they did 44%, I think is where we were at, and I think they're upping that to 75%. So they are trying to get some of that money back, but.
May I ask, why, so I'm not understanding, if we're putting buses on routes that support every child going to school, why are children walking? If it's their choice, then?
Outside the 1.5 miles.
No, we don't, I mean, I think we just decided that wasn't.
I think we're only putting kids on, I will double check when I get back to
Okay,
the office, when it is a safety thing. There are definitely still walkers. We are
Okay.
not transporting 100% of our students.
Okay.
We
I
are
thought
not.
Definitely on Main Street,
not.
Rutland, there are walkers.
There are definitely walkers, but there are situations where that it has been set up for safety reasons, we're including these
No
kids.
sidewalks.
If I had a choice, if I had a choice for the state to fix the transportation formula or the funding formula for chapter 70, I know which one I would pick.
I know which one I would pick too.
So, does anyone else have any other questions or observations for the Wachusett High School team? Well, before we move on.
So, couple quick things I just wanna highlight too. One of the slides had an enrollment update, right? So a question on a school committee we had was, okay, there's an X number of students that are now not part of the district. So Director Kroll did more work to look into, okay, why is that? You know, every school district in America will have some families move in and out, and yeah, we get that, but I think they're also looking more closely to see, well, where are some of them going? Like, why is it that from 8th to 9th grade, there might be a drop or something like that? So it's not something that is just going like, you know, unnoticed or anything too.
No, I think that's a good point. I mean, part of the that town growth and facilities task force, their charge this year is to look at potentially why some families are choosing not to send their students, specifically at the high school. You see a drop of about 20%. More kids are going to vocational programs, but we also have kids who are going to private schools and seeking other opportunities. So one of the things that task force is doing this year, and you'll actually see a survey going out, I think in the next month or so, and they did some focus groups, is they're gonna ask people those questions, you know, what's attractive about the district to you? If you chose to leave the district, why would you? And so we are trying to do some of that work, and it's why you'll see a lot of the work we're doing at the high school, looking at our programs. We're trying to make sure we have a strong academic pathway, but we have other things that are, if kids are interested in, they can pursue. It's why we're working so hard to get the auto body shop back, or the auto body program back, and working on that floor. And honestly hoping to perhaps get some new equipment in there, because, you know, for a lot of those kids, that's what the draw is, that's why they wanna come to school, and it's important that they have that option. And then like that, we have some other programs where you have healthcare options, you have some business options, you have some engineering options, and so there's all kinds of things that we're trying to offer to kids now who don't want the traditional academic route, because I think we all know this, right? You're more able to better learn, you can learn better when you're engaged in activities that you're interested in and make sense to you and you can apply. And so we're really trying to do some of that work as well. And hopeful that, you know, that will make us an attractive options for kids who may have thought about a vocational education, or, you know, we've got the AP classes or other things if kids are on a college track and that's what they're interested in. So I appreciate you bringing that up.
No, absolutely. And so one other thing, Dr. Riley, so, you know, I look at if everything goes well with the PEC, you know, agreement, right? I mean, that does bring down the overall percent increase for all 5 towns, down to the 3 territory. The chapter 70 aid, right? I can't remember a year in the last 5 where I saw the initial cherry sheet and the final number ever go down substantially. Yeah. So right now as it stands, if even it goes up, you know, right now we're using a number saying, you know, there's $75 more of an increase per student. Even if it goes up to $20 extra.
If it goes back to, one easy way to look at it, right, is right now they're basing it on 75. Last year it ended up at 150. And so if they end up in a similar track as they did last year, it should be another $490,000. Hopefully they come up with a better solution than that. Because I think they need to, but I don't know if they will. I'm just hoping they do something. I can share, and I don't know if this is where you're going. We've talked already about school committee. If the original budget passes at 4.4, I think Michelle and I traditionally make the recommendation that if we get additional Chapter 70 funds, that also goes towards the towns. If we end up at the budget or somewhere close to the 3.09, our recommendation will be to hold on to additional Chapter 70 monies because we're taking a little bit of risk with the insurance and we want to have money potentially available in E&D. And if we do so, then we can hopefully get our E&D above 2% and continue to offer a substantial amount to our towns the next year. And so that would be our approach. If we're at the number we're at right now officially, we'd advocate, and again, it's a school committee decision, but we would advocate that the additional Chapter 70, which I think probably hopefully would be another $500,000 would go to the towns. If not, and we're able to get to the lower number, our recommendation would be that the district retain that, and then it goes towards A&D, and also gives us some protection, because I think we're pretty close to the bone, and we are taking a little bit of the risk with the insurance. We feel like it's definitely gonna work out, but we also want to be able to have some protection for the district in that scenario. And we feel like if we're getting down close to 3%, we've done a pretty good job this year.
You typically spend all your E&D money every year?
No, we're right now, we've got 2% in it, and we're hoping not to touch
2%
it.
of the budget.
And so, 2% of the
No,
budget.
no, but do you spend,
No,
what'd you
no,
spend?
we've been able to build it, I lost it, on page,
No, I know it's built up, but where are we at this year? Have you used any this year?
nope,
No, yes, we did. We appropriated $1 million toward next year's budget.
we haven't used it.
All right, so that's all though, we're not,
Correct.
okay, that's all.
This year, before, we were certified for E&D this year at $3,590,000, okay? And with that money, the $3,590,000, we took $1 million and put it towards the
Understood, I
budget.
just wondered, have
I'm
you
with you.
used your E&D money
We haven't had
And we
to,
can't,
other than that?
yeah,
No,
we can't
no.
use it like you can use free cash. We have to have it approved through the budget process. Like, if I had to, the first year I was here in 2023, we had a shortfall. Like, I didn't have enough, we had to use, I don't remember if it was 950,000.
900.
We had like 1.2 million certified. I had to use 950,000. I actually have to go, and we did it on June 28th, I was actually supposed to, I'd have to go to the towns. Like, well, the school committee has to approve, and then the towns have the ability to approve that use of E&D. We can't just randomly use E&D.
Okay.
So it's not like.
And is it a majority or the whole 5 towns have to?
So if, like, when we were using it, I wasn't changing the budget, I wasn't changing your assessment. So generally, the towns are like, well,
Right, no problem, yeah.
either that, or if I had to change your, like.
There's always questions around it, so
Yeah.
I'm just.
Yeah, so
these are
no,
good-
it
I think
would,
it's a good question.
it would be, you have 45 days to respond or whatever. You know, we got a little slap on the wrist. They really held certifying E&D the following year. Had it done, the DOR took like 3 months because I was supposed to give the towns 45 days to say yay or nay. And I let you guys know, but you didn't really have 45 days to say, no, you can't do it. But there was no other way for me to get out of our budget shortfall.
See, to answer your question though, we have not used E&D in the last 3 fiscal years other than to appropriate money back to the towns to decrease their
So,
assessments.
yeah, okay.
And we're hopeful next year again, like,
Yeah.
I think we would love, because I think with E&D, where it's really healthy, is it's the one thing that we can give back to the towns that directly decreases your assessments, right?
Okay.
And so our hope is that, you know, if I'm really just totally transparent with you, my hope next year would get our E&D up to 2.5% and give you a healthy amount back as well. You know what I mean? So I'd love for us to be above 2% just for protection. And if you really get into a year where it gets horrible, you know, we could, even though, you know, give more than $1 million if we really needed to, you know, because we may get to a budget year where we're really in dire straits. And I think that's really one of the benefits of E&D as well, you know. It's not just protection to the district, but it's protection in some type of outlier budget year. When you really need it, you can give the towns relief, you know.
That line also caps at 5%, correct?
It
Yeah, you
caps it,
can't.
so if I come to an end of a year, you know, it can work the other way too, like what if, you know, you could get 4 or 5 out-of-district placements that could hit you a couple $1 million, you know, like, they can be anywhere from $200,000, $300,000, $400,000, $500,000, depending upon whether they're residential or not. So it could be, I could find out in April, like, I'm not gonna make the budget.
Yep.
I have to,
I
I don't wanna
want
have to go
everybody to know
back and
about
say,
it.
hey,
Yeah.
guys, you need to rally up some more money, I need to have something there to not have to rally up some more money.
But whenever we
So,
dip into
and
it,
then-
you've got 45 days to make sure
But-
you're square
yeah.
with why we're using it.
But I also have to try to keep it under that 5%, or I'm giving it back to you. And I don't think you want me to try to get to that 5%. There's lots of towns who keep the 5%.
You guys got 5%
Yeah.
back from Bay Path a couple times.
Yeah, so that's like, then you're going to your taxpayers and I'm saying, give me more money, I have to keep some sort of balance there. So that's why Jim and I are like, 2 or 3%, we don't wanna keep, I don't wanna, cause it's hard, like you're keeping me on an A+ level, 5%, do you know what I mean? Like 95%, it's a hard, 95 to 105%, that's a hard little window to fall in.
We'd love to get it to 3% while also giving it back to
Back,
the towns.
Okay.
Or we will.
Does
Like,
anyone have
if I'm
anything else?
over, then it should go back.
I just wanna say thank you for everything that went into this, and I appreciate the candidness of, working with what you have with the insurance to add some money back to the towns, hopefully this year, but also the candidness that we're not going to see that next year, and just, again, the circumstances, if there's extra chapter 70 this year, we're gonna save it so that we can try and help more next year, just so that there's no surprises around this same table a year from now, but I very much appreciate it.
Thank you. I
And all
mean,
the work that
everyone
went
here has
into
been
this.
straight shooters with us, and we appreciate the support.
Yeah, and as the finance committee, as the chairman of the finance committee, I would also like to thank you, and the sensitivity around the 85 Devereaux kids is a long-standing issue within the town, has nothing to do with, it's how we don't get taxes from them, and it's a lot of money. So, it neither here nor there, but I just wanted to, we're not singling out those, it's a good benefit that they get, how's that?
If I can add, going back some years, I was a teacher at Bay Path, and I was just back in the 80s, and they were here a couple of weeks ago, and they're twice the size now that they were when I was teaching there, okay? But nevertheless, the thing that I was a faculty rep for the technical division when we came to budget time, and we sat down with the people and discussed budget and what it was and so on and so forth. The thing that amazes me now is the amount of detail that goes in to the budget that you presented, that they presented a couple of weeks ago. So, I mean, it's just something that, well, okay, the world was pretty simple back then. So I guess, but nevertheless, just listening to the figures and everything that you presented tonight was, yeah, well done.
Thank you. Yeah, you guys deserve it. I mean, I think we're just trying to make sure everyone knows that we have to be transparent. We appreciate the support. We know it's a lot of money, and we know and we feel like we should be able to answer the questions about how we're using it. So, and honestly, like, kids are worth it. You get great kids. These are great towns, and so we're happy to be a part of it.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and thank you for all the work with the PEC, and thanks to the unions and the representation for that work, because that saves.
I'm excited. I'm gonna be honest with you. I feel like it's a really great partnership, and I'm really hoping it goes through, and I'm happy to. It's a nice combination of employees and district working together and hopefully being good to our towns.
So please pass my
Absolutely.
appreciation on everyone as well.
Oh,
Thank
no,
you.
I meant I wouldn't.
Is there any other budget questions for the select board this evening? Anything else for Wachusett?
Motion to adjourn? There we go.
Entertain a motion.
Second.
Motion second, any discussion? Yeah.
Sure, Matt and I.
Alex?
Hold on.
Ledger I. Alright, select board adjourned at 8:22, thank you. I'll let you continue your.
Yeah, we got a couple things. Perfect, thank you, everybody.
Oh,
We'll take it.
Thank you so much.
I was gonna say, the cookies are already bought, paid for, so you guys enjoy it.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Take a couple minutes. See you, buddy.
How's it feel back? I know what it's like.
You weren't here for me?
You're working, and you don't have the time, so hope you feel better. Uh-huh.
Thanks.
You keep saying that, I don't know if I believe her.
Budget,
Um,
when they were here,
even
you
if
know.
we have some friends that are coming over, I don't
Friends
think,
coming over, I love it.
You're doing the same thing you are.
but we might go to dinner and then go over there at 7, cause I don't feel like
Yeah.
it's
What kind
kind
of
of
fun
more,
thing do they have planned for
They
you
agree.
tonight?
We were talking about going to the Thai place, it's right behind there.
Faculty rep
Oh.
was part of the,
I've never been there either, but I heard it's really good.
was, you know, I
Yeah,
thought
you
it was
know.
something
Somebody's really close to the microphone that are not part of the finance committee
compared to what
stuff.
you're doing today.
It's gonna get a little louder in a second.
cookies to us.
Yeah, bring the cookies over.
See, don't tell me.
Slap you if you try to touch his cookies.
Here we go.
What are you doing there? Bring the sugar.
Are you back? That's good to hear. All right, guys, can I get a motion to, let's go through the minutes. Do we have a motion to approve the,
Make motion to approve the minutes of March 11th as printed.
okay,
Second.
do we have any discussion? All right, hearing no discussion on the meeting minutes, March 11th, all those in favor? Oh, we gotta do a roll call. Ludwig?
Haber abstain,
Oh, you were there.
yeah, but I didn't read them, so.
Oh.
Okay,
Can't.
Now will I.
and Ross, aye.
Make the motion to approve the minutes of March 12th.
Second.
We have a motion made and seconded. Does anyone have any discussion on the March 12th minutes? Thank you, Liz. Hearing none, roll call.
Haber abstain again.
Now will I.
Benoit abstain.
Charles, aye.
And Ross, aye. Perfect. All right, so, moving on to
Need me there?
Maya.
I think you have to bring a chair. I will bring a chair. They took them all. They took them all.
Someone's phone was way out there beeping. Or beep, 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 beep. So we had some questions and you were going to answer them. I think most of them you sent emails, correct? Or not?
So I've got the list. I think it was my thought that we have a final kind of joint meeting on the 26th, and we could use that as sort of a wrap up, unless there's something specific tonight. I'm happy to sort of ad lib. If there's a topic, I guess that you specifically wanna go through, but we use the
26?
26, but at the same time, if there's something specific that the committee wants, I'm prepared to talk about anything in particular.
We gave specifics to,
I think it's in our notes,
Tamika.
right? It's in our
Right.
notes, right?
Right,
Which one?
but at the same time, it's been one of those weeks where I've been working on a lot of other things and that list. If there's something from that list that you want me to address, I'm happy to.
so you're saying next week you'd be able to answer those questions, because there was a few of them, like, what's the minimum requirement for PEG,
yep,
cable access?
I've got all
And
that.
there was something else, and I'm sorry, I can't locate it.
I know you
Yeah.
have it written
Yeah,
down.
no,
No, I made sure it was written in our notes,
Yeah,
but.
I've got the entire list.
So,
But again, I guess thinking that we were gonna have a long night with the school tonight, I really, and getting into those individuals, but I can grab the laptop and go through, I've got everything saved, ready to go. So Peg, you wanna talk about Peg tonight?
so the only thing I wanted to bring up about PEG,
Yeah.
because we have talked about it for several meetings now, and we did get the email that I spoke of, or I think I had last meeting. Maybe not, but it was totals, remember it showed totals or bottom lines at the end of the year and stuff?
Yep, and we were trying to get
But
a,
it didn't show any detail of any sort it was going. And the reason I'm asking for it
Are you
is,
talking about revenue or expense?
both. For the
I'm
tech.
talking about it is because I know for a fact the last several years, and a number of years, not just several, I guess a number of years, we've been told that, I understand how it works, we get so much money and they spend, so they're, like, I think I said last week for a few seconds only, was their numbers usually were, and I'm gonna use the numbers of $100,000 as round numbers for revenue, or 90,000 or 100,000 or something like that. And their budget was in the 80,000 category. And it was, okay, so, all right, we got more money in than we were spending. The last several years, it's been, we don't have enough money in PEG to do closed captioning. We don't have enough money in PEG to do other things, and we're gonna get servers in because we had to fix things. And then we get those sheets from, I believe they came from the accountant. It said they got $300,000 sitting in that account in extra money. So now what I'm questioning, or would like to know or look at is, what was the money coming in? What was it going out? Not just we paid ABC contractor $20 or XYZ contractor $50. We paid them for what? And I don't wanna know like individual salary, but we paid X amount in salaries or, in those general terms. Not each individual person or anything, just what were the expenses, what was the income?
Okay. So I was prepared to talk about what we're required. I don't have those expense reports in front of me.
What you're required, I think the question on the required was.
Yeah.
Our question was the cable committee, what are they required to report? And then we were told that it's not a requirement of the state or of the cable people. It was a requirement imposed by the town of Rutland to record certain meetings.
Yeah, so the minimum required under law that we have to meet is we have to have public access services. We have to allow residents to produce and air programs. We have to allow them to provide edit access to we have to provide residents access to studio and production equipment. And we have to maintain the channels for government, so the three cornerstones, public access, which is the government, education, and a general resident or a general information station, so those three stations. We have to provide channel time to the schools, we have to provide the government access, and we have to maintain a certain level of equipment that is based on our contract with Charter. We have to deposit all of those funds into a dedicated fund, which is the account that you're talking about. And we can only spend those funds on PEG operations, so they can't be used for any other budget offsets.
Correct. So,
Um,
okay, so and I don't wanna go into all the details tonight, cause I know we wanna go home, but so you have all that, can we get a copy of that? There must be an agreement, there must be something
Well,
about.
there's the FCC rules. And
Okay.
then there is the Charter Spectrum contract, which, as you know, we're in negotiations with, so I can
Okay,
give you a
but there
copy
is
of
a
you.
contract.
Yep,
And
so,
there are selectmen's regulations apparently that they said, we want these
Policy.
policies that they want, right?
Yeah.
So can
yep,
we
so,
just get a copy of those? So we can look at them?
sure, I'm
And then we'll know
assuming,
what they are, and when somebody asks us a question, we can say, yes, here's the facts. Not somebody said. I'm not saying you, I'm saying this is what's happened in the past. Well, somebody told us this, and it's only half the sentence, it's not the whole sentence.
so I can certainly send you the link,
No, I like them printed up, I can get them printed, so I can look at them.
okay,
Yeah, tell me, sh-
yep,
right.
so
That's my thing
Yeah,
on PEG,
so
that's what I like, no.
I just wanna make sure that the number of meetings that gets covered is where the policy comes in. But there is a requirement that government meetings are filmed and and recorded and saved for, future, so that's not a policy, that's a requirement from the FCC.
But they don't have which ones are required.
No. Because every municipality is different with
Right.
how many.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so
So-
that would be under the policy one then, right? What
right,
they,
right,
what,
yep.
Right.
the town of Rutland decided, well, we wanna make sure this one, this one's recorded.
Mhm.
So you're saying studio and production equipment, we have to allow access?
Yep, that's the public access component. yes.
So any one of the 9,000 people in town can come in and say, I wanna produce this
Well,
and put it on?
so long as they meet the, they have to check out,
Efficacy.
well,
No, I get it.
we have to check out the equipment, get training, all of that,
Nope.
but absolutely.
Okay.
And we would certainly encourage that. I mean, that would be great.
They used to ask constantly for people to come up with programs or
Yeah.
come up with something to put on TV.
Because it's a requirement that
They
we.
wanted to
yeah.
fill the space, I
Yeah.
agree with you 100%.
Yeah.
But I see a lot of different programs, but from my personal experience, I can tell you, there was some things that were, said we gotta have space, and there were some things suggested and nothing ever happened.
Mhm.
The only other thing was, operational plan for the town hall. If you're only open 16 hours a week,
Oh, yeah.
what's the plans?
So until we actually get there, this is gonna I'm gonna call this a draft, right?
Yep.
Because there's a clerical union contract
Mhm.
that we would have to negotiate starting May 12th. If in fact the override was not successful, we would begin negotiations. And so those positions, right now, what we have in the budget is sort of a space holder.
Mhm.
That's why we've used the term FTEs, because this is how we know we can get to that number.
Right.
But how those positions actually work themselves out, who's working and where, would be sort of still a negotiation
Right.
piece. Okay, so that disclaimer aside, I would think that we'd be open Tuesdays and Thursdays from 8:30 to 4:30. And be closed to walk-ins Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Departments would remain available to the phone, email, and scheduled appointments if that was an appropriate. This would be sort of across the whole town hall function, including the town clerk's office, treasurer, collector, assessors, planning, inspectional services, and board of health. We recognize that, so the clerk, those hours would be reduced to 32 hours a week. So not the 40. So they would have to adjust their time within those the 4 days probably. But I think that's essentially how it would work. I think that the assessor, because they're only gonna have 34 hours, I would look at them to have fewer hours open on some of the like Tuesdays and Thursdays. They may not be there the entire 8:30 to 4:30, because I also need them in the office working on the days that the town hall is closed to the public, to be able to get their work done that they can't do when they're interacting only with the public. So the priority is that when the building is open to the public, that staff is available to interact with the public, reserving the hours that they have left to be able to work on the non-public days, to do the work that they can't do when they're interacting with the public.
But still
And when they
answering
only
phones
have
and emails.
the very best that they can, you know.
Because we do have several that are contracted that are
Mhm.
not gonna take a cut.
Correct.
So those departments
So
are
there's
gonna be
actually,
working full.
there's only two in that,
Right,
in
I
that
get it,
category,
I get it.
myself and the treasurer collector.
yep.
So yes, you know, we would be here the 40 hours.
Yep.
But again, knowing that in the treasurer's collector's office, if it aligns with our budget and they, that position loses 1.5 support, you know, they're left with a half a support person. That means that the work that Nick does in his office, maintaining, you know.
Right, he has to
all
do
that.
more because he's gonna have less.
Yeah, he's gonna be out in front, taking payments, working with and so the days that the office is closed, that's his time to sit down and do the other stuff. So none of it is a great solution. You know, we're gonna drop the ball.
No, but in order, for me,
Yeah,
when residents come and ask me why they should
Yeah.
vote for it, I wanna be able to have
Yeah.
the,
yeah, the,
you know,
yeah,
the ammunition to say,
Yeah.
here's
So-
reason why.
right, because nobody wants to plan their day around, is it a Tuesday or a Thursday? You know, I mean, when you need to come to town hall, you wanna be able to come to town hall and you wanna be able to get what you're done, get what you need done. Marriage licenses, right? I mean, if we're open on Tuesdays and Thursdays, you have to plan as a couple, because you both have to come.
Mhm.
You've got to coordinate your schedules. I mean, it just adds such another layer of, you know, inconvenience, for sure. And that's why keeping the public facing hours, Tuesdays and Thursdays, at least, we're not open Fridays now anyway, but at least you get that Thursday before going into the weekend. So for those types of things, if you've got a closing coming up, you can make sure that you're coming in on Thursday to get what you need for your municipal liens and your sign-offs from everybody. You know, I expect Thursdays will be a pretty busy, pretty busy day.
Okay.
And then I think you had questions about, you didn't like the word FTE, totally get that. For our public facing, I've tried to start working on making sure that I'm referring to positions, employees, without using FTE. But I think, as you know, from a budget standpoint, we need to maintain that FTE because that's how we are going to quantify what those reductions are and what those positions are. And it kind of allows us to project what the salaries are going to be based on how many FTEs we have. And that also helps us calculate the benefits. And all of those indirect costs are based on an FTE. So understanding that as I'm having forward-facing conversations, we want to keep this as humanized as possible.
Yeah, because that was why we asked the questions that we did.
Yeah.
Is it part-time, is it full positions? And both of the public safety told us was full-out positions.
So
Yeah, they're
that's why,
eliminating people on shifts.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's not half here and half there, it's
Yeah.
complete elimination. So, and most people don't know, or don't wanna say most, but some are not gonna understand what an FTE is.
Right, right. Understood. And I think that perhaps in this setting, I defaulted to that because we're talking budget and we're
Right.
talking numbers but certainly in all my presentations, I actually had a really great test run. We had an all-staff meeting this morning. I think we had 60 people in here. It was a really good meeting. I showed them the slide presentation that I've been working on for the public information sessions and got their feedback about it, and they got to ask questions about, the process and all of the stuff that they probably, even if they live in town and came to a public information session, they wouldn't necessarily feel comfortable asking in a public setting. So it was a really good meeting, and I feel good that people had that opportunity to see it before it goes public.
But you had told, all the department heads had been told
Oh, yeah, and
what the results of the cut budget would be,
absolutely.
God forbid it goes through.
Absolutely, but I think hearing it from me, getting to see what the presentation is gonna be, how am I gonna be talking about this to the public, right? So that they're prepared when they're out and about and somebody from the public comes up and asks them a question about something that they've seen at the public information sessions, staff is at least aware of what they've seen and how it was presented, so they can respond,
I don't know who asked, but somebody asked if we have any, like, I know police and fire have when they're the busiest for calls. Do we know how many people come through the town hall? Do we know when it's the busiest at the town hall?
It's the busiest at town hall when tax bills are due or, when bills are due. That's when town hall gets busy, or during elections. We don't have day-to-day stats. Are we busier on a Monday than we are on a Wednesday?
Okay.
We don't keep those.
So we don't know, and we don't know on average per week, there's 75 people. Okay, just curious.
So, we had some questions about the reserve fund transfer, and we did not do anything with it related to the town account. And that's gonna happen on the 26th, correct?
Yes, yeah,
Put that on the agenda for the 26th.
that's
I've been assured that we have all the answers that we need.
Well,
Seth's, like that autograph was Seth's. And we just, all the questions that we had related
We
to,
got the email.
Yeah.
Okay, you sent us
Well,
email.
yeah, but, so just on that quickly, I am always happy to respond to emails. And I'll try to do it as timely as possible. My only concern is, I think it's important that we acknowledge what we're emailing about in a public setting, because otherwise that's sort of happening offline. And so those follow-up questions aren't being addressed in a public meeting. So I just.
We
so-
never do that in this committee. We don't ask questions that haven't been brought up at a meeting.
Okay, but
I know other committees do
Yeah.
and have conversations, but in this
Yeah,
we don't.
But my responses, right, only went back out in an email.
But it'll go out next week when we start having the conversations.
Oh, okay. I just want to make sure, because I don't want to inadvertently, by trying to be responsive to emails, also limit public access to that information. So I'm just.
Yeah, when we
I'm
go
gonna-
to approve it, it'll be,
I'm
yes,
gonna-
we've confirmed it's this, yes,
I'm
we
gonna-
go through all the questions that we
Yeah.
had.
I'm gonna be cognizant of it, and you're gonna be cognizant of it, so that we all make sure that like I said, I think it's great because it keeps the information current and it gets the answers that you need when you're thinking of it. But I also want to make sure that we're closing that sort of public loop and making sure that we're bringing it back up again, whatever was shared in an email, so that the public has access to it also.
I just wanna repeat, anything you wanna send back as a response, if you put it on a piece of paper and give it to me, I love it.
Okay, all right, fair enough, Tommy. I'm,
I mean, I read the emails too, but there's just so
Yeah,
many of them
no.
that come in, it's. and
yes.
I'd like to take this, a lot of times I'm sitting there and I like to take if I'm reading something and I wanna compare it to something else or something else.
So Tommy, my husband is on the finance committee in the town where we live, and he comes home from his finance committee and he's got a stack of papers like this. And I get so mad because he leaves them on the coffee table, and then I have to shuffle them from the coffee table to the other table, and they make their way around the house, and then he wants to know where his paper is. And I said, I'm pretty sure it's all in an email, dear. No, I want my paper. So I get it. I live with it. I totally understand it.
Give me his number, we're gonna have to have a
Yeah,
few
oh,
drinks.
yeah. And when and then he accuses me of hiding it, and then worse, throwing it out, which may or may not have happened
No,
before.
we don't do that. I know.
May or may not have happened.
May or may not have happened.
I move my stuff around, but I know where it all's at.
Yeah.
So as related to the budget process, and, as related to the budget process. Hello,
Anyway,
as related to the budget process, Barbara, did not put the bylaw on reservist spot for this Maytown meeting on there because she had some questions in language. And it sounds like we'll have plenty of time to do it for the fall, possibly. But we're not gonna do it, just so everybody's aware of that. We had a request come through during this budget season, from the chairman of the Board of Selectmen that I wanna read it, cause she would like any requests made of the town administrator in a financial tone brought through me, and then I will make the request just so that we're not all hitting her with different things during this budget part of the season. I don't think it's a problem.
Are you gonna say it isn't that what we've been doing? You've been asking them.
Yeah.
I think you've approved to let Carol do some stuff. We have approved.
Right, but yes. What we wanna do,
Know what this
Heather has made
board
me.
would like us to do.
All right, I would like to go ahead.
how about this? I think what Jen is trying to get at is that she knows that I'm becoming a little unglued, and there's a lot of a lot of people asking a lot of questions all at the same time about all the same stuff. So if we wanna just choose one of you as sort of the person that manages the questions, so that I'm only emailing with one person, whether it be the chair, whether it be Carol. I think that's what she's getting at, is that if there's multiple.
And that's what she wants. She just wants us to have single source, which
Are
I
you
understand.
getting multiple questions from the finance committee?
I am.
The same question from different people.
No, you're all over the place. But it's I do think that the questions are all good questions, and the questions that have been asked are appropriate questions. It's just, I don't wanna lose track of them, for one. And again, some of the questions are coming out in a meeting, and you make a list from the meeting, and then there are other questions that are coming in from emails, and I think.
One slip of, all right, so back 2 seconds, and I kinda had some questions about it. I agree with it in some parts, but what they're trying to do is avoid an open meeting law violation by someone accidentally sending it to one person instead of the group. So we gotta be careful with that. And that's part of this whole thing, so.
It's actually the opposite. If we send it to everybody and then it gets sent, and then one person sent it, that's where the problem comes in. If one person sends it,
However,
and one person goes it
you
back, it's
understand
not
where
a
the.
problem.
Listen, single point of contact, right? That's what we're talking about.
Right.
It's Darren, yes? Is that what we're doing?
I don't
Absolutely.
think that's the best use of
All
your
right,
time.
I've
let's
been
keep-
saying, we've been
Nothing
talking.
against you, Darren, and I don't mean any disrespect, but I think you're working during the day. I think that's hard. I think as long as we do, if somebody
I don't care if Carol
volunteers,
wants to do it.
and
We
whether it
just
be
have to-
Carol, whether it be Lynn, depending
We
upon
just
what
have
we're
to have
asking.
someone to, let's bring it up at the next meeting, that's all, they just want a single source. And that, it's not Darren has to do it.
No, I get it.
It's just,
That's
I just wanna be made aware of it because I didn't know some things are going on. I kinda knew some things are going on, but I didn't, and then
And the select board all have to go through Jen as well?
Yes.
that's a,
So, I've been talking about this for the last 2 or 3 years, and I said that we, as the committee, needs to discuss our questions and our stuff in the committee.
and send an email
And then agree on it, number one, so it's in our record,
and a vote.
and then it goes to the chairman to go to whoever it should go to.
I agree 100%.
And I think
Singles,
that's-
and that would be single source.
Correct, and I don't see a reason why the answers to it, if we've asked a question, the answers can come back to everybody, that,
Absolutely,
fine.
but they don't,
now, if
I
somebody,
guess they don't wanna have
I agree with that 100%.
any issue here either way.
I think they're just, I think Jen is just worried because she came in the other day and my head was down on the desk. So, and it wasn't anything to do with this committee, it's just the budget in general. I'm gonna have a cookie.
If somebody
Budget
is,
in general,
if
public
somebody-
is worried, this is not an option.
Budget, departments in town or.
Yeah, everything.
People are starting to have
Absolutely.
things going on.
some of the things that are cooking
lot.
out there and hearing right now are
Are
kind
not
of
good.
crazy. But what I wanted to say was, if somebody bumps into somebody when they're in the town hall, I go over, if I happen to go in to ask a question of Tamika or something else, I happen to see Heather, so I may say something, but I'm not trying to take her time or bother her about something unless I ask if there's a minute to talk about something, whatever, but I haven't even done that, I mean, I haven't really done that, so.
Single source, we'll do it at a meeting.
And I'm not using, I'm just using you
Yeah, I
because
think
you're
we
here.
just-
We just do it at a meeting. we
Just like
talk
what we've
about-
been doing, Heather,
right.
could you, could you
Exactly.
take care of that? And it doesn't necessarily have to be you, it could be somebody else, but it could be you.
Yes, but Carol asked the questions and that's fine. I don't have a problem. We just have to, they have to know where it's coming from. Because if we're all firing questions at them, they're all worried.
But also part of that coin, if you flip that coin over, if you're a taxpayer in Rutland, if you wanna go ask a question about a public record or some information, you have every right to do that.
Depends on how you walk in that office.
That's correct.
You're 100%, and
Yep.
we all have that right.
That's correct. Cause you take that class every 2 years and you should know that.
As a taxpayer, we can ask anything.
I have not shut my door yet.
Absolutely.
It has been wide open and I have, so, and I wanna continue that. I just also wanna get to May 11th in one piece and with as much,
How was the presentation received by the 60-odd people that were here today?
It was good. They had really good feedback. There were some slides that just didn't hit the mark and they gave me some really good feedback on that and we'll certainly incorporate that. And I suspect that presentation 1 and 2 will be different from, you know what I mean? Like I'll get feedback from the first public and hopefully by the end of it, I won't be a stuttering mess, but no, it was good. I think that they appreciated that we were very transparent about it and could have a discussion about the what ifs and how different Rutland will look.
Devastating they would be.
Devastated, yes.
But
Those cuts will be devastating.
But acknowledging that it really does start with employees. They're the doers of the things, and they're the ones who show up every day and make a commitment to getting what they can get done. And then the public officials, you, the select board, your roles is to make sure that the monies that are appropriated are spent wisely and honestly. You know, like, what is your role in all of this? Because I think that sometimes staff loses sight of what you're all trying to do. And then finally, the residents, and making sure that they understand that their role is to make a decision what they feel they can invest in their community. And so we spent a lot of time talking on what everybody's roles are in this.
So, Carol, okay.
By next Wednesday, would we be able to get a new spreadsheet with updated numbers?
Yes.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, I am leaving the school number exactly where it is.
Yeah.
Because I think that until there's any certified.
That's what we have to go with, because that's what's been approved.
Right. And I think that even if the FY27 assessment is reduced, I think that we need to really think about what our messaging is around maintaining that 3.1 number, not only for the reasons that we talked about tonight, which is that we don't know, you know, the impact is significant this year, but it will bleed into the fabric next year and going forward.
It's like free cash. It's gonna affect us eventually.
Yeah, and we know that if we don't need to appropriate it, then we won't raise it, right? So if the assessment comes in lower and the override at 3.1 is passed, it just means we wouldn't raise the full 3.1. We would raise only what we need to raise. And I think, you know, looking for some feedback on how we make sure that we are sharing that in a way that is understandable, and because it's what would happen. We wouldn't raise the full 3.1.
And
but-
nobody believes it, but
Right,
that's
but-
what I'm saying, you gotta explain it.
But we
because-
got to explain it, but you have to explain it in such a way that that makes sense. But knowing that if we don't appropriate, I mean, if we don't approve the override at 3.1, then the math stops mathing for FY28 and 29, because.
Now, going back just 1 second on the
Yes.
school number, you said you're gonna leave it the same.
Yeah.
Now, if I remember correctly, on the sheets that we got, that number that we had was just slightly lower than what they actually
Yeah,
approved.
it's 18, they've
Okay.
approved 18,808, $18,808 and
I don't
change.
remember the numbers, but, okay, but it was just a little higher, and if this thing that they're talking about finalizes, it'll be lower than the number we actually had.
By 425,000.
Okay, okay.
Which is a big number, but again, it's like you said, it's like a free cash hit. So
Is that something we can apply to the town of Rutland?
what?
Insurance?
I've been taking notes right along. The select board are gonna meet next week, on the 30th. Our insurance consultant from the Boyle Group is gonna be at the meeting to talk about why we weren't able to make any moves this year. But certainly, I think in light of this conversation tonight, as well as some suggestions that Alex has from experience in his world, things to look at.
Yeah, we've had two.
Worth challenging for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
We have.
I really need to
three
drop
people
here in a couple
that all
minutes.
have done this, but
Yeah.
We've been bringing this up for at least the last 5 years.
yeah, but
At
we've
least.
challenged it and we don't get anywhere.
So the issue is the vast majority of your employees are in a collective bargaining agreement. And that collective bargaining agreement states very specifically a group health insurance, right? So that language is what has to be negotiated. And kudos to the schools for being able to negotiate with their bargaining agreements to change that language. I mean, it's a structural change to their agreement. And how we manage a structural change in all of those in all of those CBAs, which all sort of, you know, they expire and get renegotiated on a rotating level. It's gonna be a process, but it's certainly worth.
For that kind of savings, yes.
Yeah, the collective bargaining agreement is specific to an insurance or an insurance plan.
It says group health insurance.
Yep.
Doesn't say specifically HPHC or Blue Cross
No.
Blue Shield, doesn't say that, it just says group health plan, which
There's
what they've got, I think, is kind of still a group health plan.
Right.
Because you can't do it on your own.
Well, right.
we have to have.
Yeah,
yes.
so I definitely, I'm not gonna shy away from saying that we don't need to, I mean, my goodness, if they can get that done, we certainly need to look at it. And maybe, you know, there's impact bargaining, there's all sorts of, but we need to have a plan and we need to know what we're asking for and, you know, that's, and it's gotta work for employees, right? This, for what the school was able to accomplish, that it certainly worked for their employees as much as it worked for their, for the district. And I think that's the challenge, is making sure that whatever solution isn't just a benefit to the budget, that it benefits employees.
Right. Everything I've ever put in has benefited both.
Yeah.
So,
benefited both.
so the last thing I got is Carol did a ton of work on this Devereaux, what they pay, they don't pay in taxes. Is that the right way to say it? And it's like $1.2 million. What do we as a committee, in lieu of everything we know, I know it's gonna be very delicate steps, but how should we approach this as a committee to try to do something with this? And I don't know how to do it. Does anyone have any ideas? Because we have to try to get some funding somehow, some way.
They don't have to give us anything.
They don't, but have
So
we,
it would be a pilot agreement. The only, you know, the assessors would negotiate a pilot and approved by the select board. I mean, it's certainly the finance committee can be the wind beneath the wings, so to speak, but it's.
Well, it's the finance committee that did the work, or at least one of the
you did a
members.
lot of, I don't know how many hours you.
I'm just telling you what the structure, what the.
But you did it.
Well,
I did it because I was curious about.
so the first thing is we should put it on our agenda for a meeting and discuss the material. I haven't seen any material, so.
Well, that's why I'm bringing, I mean.
No, I understand that. So we need to put it here and then say we're gonna talk about it and put out the
And then-
facts
And print it out,
and print it out. And then we can talk about it and make it, and then we would write up a formal recommendation that we said, this is our viewpoint and we think this should be done, whether it goes to the selectmen or whatever.
Cause I think we just, some way or form of, we gotta go up and say, hey, guys, can you help us out?
I think that there's more, and yeah, I agree, we should put this on probably a separate agenda, but I think there's a lot more to find out about the actual cost for Devereaux in I think.
Well, then that could be, once we talk about it, that could be part of the discussion.
Like between us here, we were like, just, you know, as I was saying, I was filling in the blanks with how much money based on, you know,
The
$5,000, but you know, it's not all profit. And, you know, the fact that we're hiring coordinators and things like that on the budget, so I'm saying, we're talking about the budget.
To help that with
To help that, and
the
yes,
issue.
so I think that there could be more, maybe I'm naive enough to think that you must be able to say, how much does Devereaux cost us based on, you know, what they've got here for or what the data is that they have. They know that they've got 85 students.
I think we should, because as long as I've been around town here, not just on the finance committee, but I've been around town for a little bit. This question's been coming up for years. Nobody knows what those actual, what the impact or what the drain is or whatever you wanna call it is.
Yeah.
I think it's finding that, then finding out what other people have been successful doing, other towns, other
Or other
municipalities.
groups like
And,
that.
and then a relationship with Devrel to make them, because they're gonna have to have compassion on us.
Well, they're
I
gonna
think,
have to,
To
yes.
buy into it. They
Colleges and institutions, in other municipalities do help.
they like to be good neighbors.
Right, and we get a $45,000.
Correct. And once upon a time, that was a very generous offer, but I think it's been stagnant for decades.
Used to be 5,000 or 2,500 for a long time.
Well, and the other part of the story is, and I was hoping that somebody knew, but somewhere along the line, I don't think that Devrel could just start sending the kids to the school. I would
There
have
was
thought
some
that
sort
that
of
would
a,
have been a
well, and it was
conversation.
when my girls were going to school, they were able to integrate into the school because they somehow, I don't know the answer to that question, but during my girls' time, it was a flood into the school. And for some reason.
So we should find that
How
out.
about you invite Deborah to come to one of your finance committee meetings? I mean,
We could, but we should have
Let's have a
meeting
discussion
and
first.
then.
Tamika,
have
could
our
you put this
discussion.
on the next agenda, cause
Not on the 26th, not the 26th,
God help
not the
no,
26th,
please no.
the one after that.
I think it would be a question generating thing than to ask, what can, and I know it's budget season, so this might not even fly until after.
26th,
everything.
Well, I'm just gonna say the
Yeah,
same
it
thing.
certainly isn't
gonna
gonna.
be
It's gonna be a budget
and
discussion
then that
with,
depends
and
on-
it's joint with the select board.
But I was just gonna say,
And I would
I
suggest,
understand.
the assessors as well.
we should just get started, and not next meeting, like you said, but maybe a couple weeks after that, get started and really, we're gonna be full out the
I
next
mean, when she
month.
told me the number, my jaw hit the floor. And as did her, cause when I said it to her, she's like,
Well, I would suggest that we could start some legwork here, at least questions that we
Right.
would like to ask, and then
Exactly.
wait till after the budget
Correct.
season's over so that we
Correct.
can,
Exactly.
because I think the people.
Yeah, we're
are
not gonna do
need-
anything
That's
this
what I'm
year.
saying.
Yeah.
Then we can get the
And they're
full
not gonna be
picture.
able to help us either this year.
Right, we can get the full picture of that.
Alright,
But it's just, I always, often feel like the bad guy, but I poke holes, because if you don't ask the questions, you don't come up with maybe a
you're
solution
not the bad guy,
somewhere.
cause you asked the right question, but the problem is, we still didn't know the answer
No,
that
I
we
know,
know.
but
And
even about the
it's-
transportation, if we don't try to think creatively, we might stumble across something just by
Right.
a conversation, and I don't try to be the bad guy, I'm just.
No, you wouldn't, you'd be the bad girl.
I'd like to know, well, anyways.
Anyways.
Alright, are we adjourned? Motion
What
to
we have-
adjourn?
Yes, please.
Second,
Any discussion?
No discussion.
And he's gone,
Not, we don't
wait
need
a
roll
minute,
call.
who's that down there?
town of Rutland. He's gone, he waved and
Okay.
said bye.
He already.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Good.
Take these into the office.
Take them home.
Yep.
Nope.
Give them to the DPW, who have been working really hard clearing our roads.
Snow, I've got this little tiny pile of snow left, that's it. It's amazing. I wouldn't put away these tables because they've got the events